Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission for Thursday, September the 12th. If you have a cell phone with you, now is a really good time to turn it off. I just turned mine off. And if you have an item that you wish to be heard on, there are some sign-up sheets out on the table in the hallway that look like this. If you'd fill one out for us, that's very helpful for us just to keep track of who's here, who wants to speak, and help us with our paperwork, name, address, and so on. For those of you who do not appear here regularly, the way this works is we have a few little things to take care of here at the beginning. When we get to the items requiring separate votes, we'll have each of the applicants come forward, give us their name and address, tell us what it is they're here asking for. We may have some questions of them. If there's anyone else here who wishes to be heard, either for or against that item, we'll ask them to come forward also, give us their name and address, voice their questions and concerns. And then we may have some questions for them or not. Commissioners may consult amongst themselves, and then we will call each item for a vote in turn. First item on the agenda is the receipt of the minutes of the August 22nd. Oh, no, before we start, I'm sorry. We have with us today our new planning director, Jeff Butler, who may look vaguely familiar to you because he's been with us for a while. He was the assistant planning director under Aubrey McDermott when she was elevated city manager. There was a process to find another one, and luckily we were able to choose somebody that we were already very comfortable with and who's been on the job for a while, and we don't have to break in somebody new. Jeff has been with the city of Oklahoma City since, it's 2009, is that right? That's right. And has been, had a leadership position in a number of larger projects, and so this is going to be a very easy, seamless, I'm saying for myself, transition. And we're very lucky and glad to have him. So welcome aboard, officially.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Now, the first thing on the agenda is the receipt of the minutes of the August 22nd, 2019 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes. Would you cast your votes, please? Is that all of us? Yep. It is. Okay. The minutes are received. We have continuance requests. First, the uncontested continuances.
We have 5 uncontested requests. The first is number 28, SPUD 1127. That's been deferred to September 26th. Item 29, CE 1003, deferred to October 10th. Number 30, C 7097, deferred to October 10th also. Number 31, which is C 7102, deferred to October 10th. And number 32, SP 536, deferred to October 24th. We also have new requests. Number 16, SPUD 1152, has been deferred to September 26th. And item number 26, PUD 1730, deferred also to September 26th.
Is there anybody here today who thought they wanted to be heard on any of those items? If not, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the continuances as read.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue items 16, 26, 28 through 32. Would you cast your votes, please? And they are continued. Just because it is so far at the end of the agenda and because those benches are so hard, I will note that staff has recommended continuance of item number 27 and ask if the applicant is in agreement to that, and if so, we can dispose of it now, save a little wear and tear. Is the applicant present? Perhaps not. Okay, well, we'll put that to the end of the agenda then and hear it in turn decide then. So, next item on the agenda is the consent docket. These are items that are fairly routine in nature and for which there have not been protests lodged. So we vote on them just as a block rather than individually. Would you read those for us, please?
Yes, the first one is a final plat of Northwest Expressway and Mustang Commercial Center, and that is located north of Northwest Expressway and east of North Mustang Road. Item 2 is a final plat of Chisholm Creek Village Phase 2. That is located north of West Hefner Road and west of Northwestern Avenue. Item 3 is a final plat of Casey's Canterbury Plaza. That's located north of Southwest 44th and east of South Mustang Road. Item 4 is an application by Oklahoma City Waste Disposal to close a portion of South Rockwell Avenue, located north of Southwest 29th Street. Item 5 is an application by Jamil and Marie LLC to rezone 3915, 3919, and 3923 from C3 to R4. And item number 6, application by James Macy to rezone 630 West Hefner Road from I-1 to I-2. Item 7 is an application by Shaz Investment to rezone 3131 Northwest 192nd Street from R1 to O1. And finally, number 8, application by Armon Investments to rezone 3717 North Meridian Avenue from R1 single family to O2.
Is there anybody here today that thought they wanted to be heard on any of those items? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move to approve items 1 through 8 on the consent docket.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve items 1 through 8. Would you cast your votes, please? Commissioner Privet? Oh, I'm sorry. Who am I missing? Pennington. Oh, where? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Those are approved. Items requiring separate votes.
The first item is number 9, PUD SP 1438B, application by Kennel Partners, LLC, for a specific plan. This is for PUD 1438, and it's located at 1717 East Hefner Road.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. On behalf of the applicant, this is a specific plan that would allow for an expansion of a currently existing facility. The PUD that was approved allowed up to 200 runs. Right now we have 100. This expansion would take it to 140. Everything proposed within this is compatible and in conformance with the PUD as noted by staff. Be happy to answer any questions. We'd ask for your approval.
I have a question.
Yes.
The screening that you're proposing is privacy fabric over chain link fencing. Mm-hmm. The PUD indicated materials for the site-proof screening shall include wood, PVC, or similar material to be designated at the time of specific plan. I happen to have a dog who loves to tear through my back screen with some regularity. I'm not sure that's really a good screening material for kennels.
So I'll let Mr. Pittman, who runs the kennel, I'm not a dog person, so I'm going to have the dog person.
So the screening material is what you see around tennis courts, and this is just the exterior of the facility, the chain link that goes around the facility, not that is part of the dog runs.
Oh, I see. So they're not in there scratching
That's
away
right.
at
This is just exterior fencing, and that was what was approved when we permitted the project 6 or 7 years ago, and it's still up.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? Is there anybody present who wishes to be heard on this item? I didn't have any other questions about the specific plan. So I'll take a motion if nobody else has anything they want to add.
I will make a motion to approve item number 9.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 9. Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
Nothing's working right today. Item 10.
Item 10 is an application by the 95th SPA for consideration of a lot split deed approval on property located at 9612 South Pennsylvania Avenue, and it does have a variance also, which is in TE1.
Good afternoon, Brad Reeves, Crafton Toll, 300 Point Parkway Boulevard, here on behalf of the applicant. We have a lot split for a property. The owner of the property bought the land. He bought the piece that we have. I found out after the fact that they would already split the two pieces to the south from this to create the number of lot splits that we could have. And so we're requesting the lot split. We have the variance that requests the lot split for more than the allowable. So that's the variance that we have.
Commissioners, do we have any questions of the applicant? Is there anybody else here who wishes to be heard on this item?
Can I ask a general question?
Certainly.
I guess at some point you got to have a limitation. I mean, is 4 a magic number? Like, where did that even begin with? Do we know?
JJ?
Not really. I mean, 3 is the number that you can come in and split a parent tract twice to create 3 lots. Anything more than that, it should be a subdivision. But these were previously split. This is the only piece that's left. So.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I get it now. Thank you.
I do have a question on the proposed lot lines. I'm presuming the panhandle up there on the north is going to be an entrance drive?
Yes, sir, and it was, we've discussed some stuff with staff on utilities. This allows for water to come in there as well.
Okay.
They have some requirements but we've discussed that that's coming from recommendations from.
So it looks like the junior high to the north has an access road right there as well. I have a concern with having 2 drives that close together, especially with one being a school.
So that the real drive is actually going to come through we're doing a current office park there. It's partially so you don't landlock that piece back in the back. They'll have a shared access through the front, and I believe we have one access point. We have the engineering plans going through right now. So we have one access point. That's basically we have to have some frontage onto Pennsylvania.
Right.
And so the access point is shared through the office. It'll have a connected parking area in the future. They're doing an office for the front. The back is currently no plan on it, but another office at some point. But I don't believe that we have an issue with, according to, the variance on separation for drives there. And like I said, it's currently on the office that's going through.
The drive that you're talking about for the school is more like an alleyway into the back of the school. The real drive is that U-shaped thing in the front, and that's where everybody pulls in and pulls out of and drops their kids off at. That's a way back into the gym back there, kind of.
Okay.
So there will not be a second curb cut there?
I don't believe so, no.
And do you have any cross access to the south?
To the south? I don't believe so. I did not bring the engineering plan on that. If that south stubs, then we can make a connection to it.
Okay.
If they stub into our property, we can make the cross connection.
I find it terribly annoying when I'm on properties that are right next to other properties that are just like it, but you can't get from one to the other. Drives me crazy without going out on the street, and that's kind of the whole point and purpose of our connectivity policy. So I think it'd be a good idea if you follow up on that.
I will look into it. Like I said, I didn't bring the engineering. I apologize, but if we don't, and we have the ability, we can tie in.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed the curb cut issue. And now that Nate brings it up, I got to admit, I kind of hate that. I don't have a problem with the lot split. Is there any way we can talk about flipping this plan so that the panhandle is on the south side of that?
So we had that initially, and there's a water line there. There's also a gas line there. Per utilities, they've requested that we have it on the top. And like I said, I don't believe that we actually have the drive there. The drive is further down south. The ability it's for a water line that comes in, and the fact that if we don't put that in, we have no access to Pennsylvania.
Right, okay, so this is the typical utilities workaround.
It is.
Okay.
But the access comes through.
the access workaround.
Yeah, it's utilities has asked us to have this, and it's because of there's a gas line on the south. They didn't want their water line and their sewer line down there. We've pushed it to the top.
Yeah, we should still, we still need to address this with utilities at some point about how we clean that up.
Well, there's still, at the end of the day, there's going to be 2 lots here that are zoned O2, right? So are they going to both be entitled to access as a result of that?
They could. You could also, as part of the deed approval, establish limits of no access, vehicular access at the end of the panhandle. And that, I think he'd be fine with that because he intends to share access with the office further to the south.
So there are two separate things there. They have to have frontage on a street.
Right.
So the panhandle provides them that.
So we can limit vehicular access to that.
That's right.
I think that probably satisfies the traffic concern.
I think so too.
I think it makes sense.
Anybody else?
You're good with that, right? I just want to make, okay.
No, that's fine. We can agree to that.
So does that get added as a TE?
I think it's a condition of the variance. Is that what we're saying, JJ? That the limits of no access are a condition of the variance?
Be a condition of the lot split.
Okay, a condition of the lot
The
split.
lot split is platting, so with the platting, we can establish limits of no access.
So we would make a motion to approve the variance, and then in the second piece, we'd make a motion to approve the application subject to the limit of vehicular access.
Applied to the tip of the panhandle.
Got it.
So why don't you do that?
If there's no more discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the variance for item number 10, DA 25840, to section 3.4.4.C2 sub F of the subdivision regulations.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 10, the variance to item number 10 as stated. Cast your votes, please. It's approved.
Make a motion to, I guess here we are approving. I'll make a motion to approve DA 25840, subject to a limitation of vehicular access on the panhandle of the lot split.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 10, subject to limits of no access onto Pennsylvania Avenue. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 11 is an application by Peregrine Real Estate to rezone 10701 North Council Road from PUD 763 to C3 Community Commercial and R2 Medium-Low Residential.
Brad Reed, Craft and Toll, here on behalf of the applicant. So currently there is a PUD on the property as requested. The use that was allowed in PUD 763 was some C3 usage on the corner, and then R4M, including senior independent living, congregate care, 3 and 4 family residential, multifamily residential, but excluding 2-family and single-family residential. So the PUD specifically excluded the uses for single-family and 2-family residential. And so we're doing a rezoning to allow for some duplex zoning, basically where the R4M was, and then the C3 zoning is still on the corner. We've changed the dimensions of this slightly from what the PUD was. They were a little bit shallower. We've added some depth on the C3 I think from 220 to 250, and then more or less the width of that is still the same.
So depth from council?
Yes, ma'am. It was 220, and we went to 250.
Okay. Do we have any questions of our applicant? Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 11. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 12 is a preliminary plat of Lawson Place located at south of West Hefner Road and west of North Council Road.
In Brad Reeves, Craft and Soul. This is the preliminary plat for the item that we just heard. Like I said, it's a duplex addition that abuts Lawson Farms there. There's a church on the south. There's still the C3 on the corner. We're putting that as one lot right now. There is a large common area that runs in the middle. It's going to handle the detention needs and then some common area space for that. It gives a buffer from the C3 to the R2 section there. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I don't think we had any.
On the access to the common area, it's a little hard to see in the exhibit that I have, but is that north of proposed lot 10?
We can provide some, it's not currently in there, but we can provide, we'll provide access to that common area.
And then are you providing any kind of pedestrian connections in that common area out to Hefner Road?
So it's open to Hefner Road there, so on the north. Are you requesting some?
Well, I'm just, is that common area, you said it's serving detention, so is that slope of that detention area basically from the back of the lots over to the lot line? Is there
it'll have a
recreation
bank.
space in there?
It'll have a bank on the outside of it, yeah.
Is there recreation space or space for a path?
Yes, I'm not sure that path was planned, but we didn't currently have a plan for that, I believe. There's a requirement here that 0.28 acres of recreational common area, not drainage-related common area, and we're fine with that.
So do you know where that is being provided in that area?
I'm not sure. So the pond area hasn't really been designed, really. It's a rough estimation. Okay. It can fit in that area, okay, and then have the ability to have,
What I would like to see is that there be access provided from the neighborhood to that area.
And we will provide that, yes.
And looking at, lot 11, what's currently shown as lot 11 seems to be a good location for that, because then it's a straight shot out there. And then you have that open space, and then later on, if a neighborhood association wants to do a small play area or something, that would be available for
that. Yeah, we would have no problem with agreeing to that, either there or between one of the lots on Lawson Place Road. We could provide access there as well. Okay.
And so you're in agreement with TEs?
Yes.
I think TE number 4 will take care of the pedestrian access requirement.
Yes, and we're fine with that one. I think it's basically what I was, Lawson Place or Northwest 105th, which is what we're discussing. We'll provide pedestrian access from that point. Like I said, the 0.28 acres of recreational common area, we're fine with that. Landscape plan's fine. And we're fine with the sidewalk. So we agree with all TEs.
Is there anything else? Is there anybody else here today who wants to be heard on this item? If not, I'll take a motion.
All right, motion to approve with the recommended TEs.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 12, subject to the technical evaluations. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 13 is an application by Harold Smart to rezone 615 Northeast 5th Street from R2 to SPUD 1085.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicants who are here with me. This is a bit of an unusual item in that it came before the Planning Commission previously on May 23, 2019. What you are seeing is the exact same SPUD that you unanimously recommended for approval. There was a bit of confusion at the time, I believe, with staff on what the development would be. What you're getting now is the schematic of the full build-out. So what we have is a site that's currently zoned R2, so 2 separate duplex lots are what are being zoned. So what you could build there now would be 2 duplex structures, i.e. 4 dwelling units. That's what's proposed here, but we're doing an SPUD to allow us to build a more modern and frankly more aesthetically pleasing development. So you will have detached single-family homes as you see in the exhibit. So again, nothing has changed about the SPUD. It is identical to the SPUD that you recommended approval unanimously on, but because there was a protest letter in the packet, staff thought it prudent to bring it back here so that you could recommend this case again with the updated exhibits.
Is that like a belt and suspenders action?
It appears so.
Is that really the only reason we're bringing this back?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Nothing has changed in the SPUD document.
I thought the owner had changed the building height and the driveways. There were some other things that had changed.
It was requested at the time to look at the access, but if you recall the image that you saw at Planning Commission, you saw 2 structures. You didn't see the 4, even though the 4...
I mean, it doesn't even matter what's on that piece of paper. This is just a drawing. This doesn't, I mean...
Perhaps we clarified a few details, but nothing about the theme or the plan of this development has changed. I mean, do you agree with that?
So did this go to City Council?
We never went to City Council. Prior to that, because, and I think JJ's right, I think maybe access was one of them, we wanted to come back because there was a bunch of letters in there, so that it was clear that there weren't changes from the time of Planning Commission until the time of City Council.
Okay. That seems really weird and inefficient and silly, and it seems like a big burden on the applicant as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure why that would take 3 months to sort that out and get it back up here.
We were happy to do it to make sure it's all in shape to move forward.
Are you saying that staff requested that it come back to us?
When JJ and I were talking, based upon the protest, we felt it best to avoid any questions at City Council from the particular protester that somehow they were confused. And so JJ and I together decided this was perhaps the best and easiest to clarify exactly what it is. I think there was some confusion that there are actually 2 lots within the legal description. What you saw, the first image was simply 2 structures, when in reality what was recommended for approval pursuant to the SPUD was really 4 structures. So we had the architect go and show all 4 structures with what the access will look like, and then now we're here.
Did you client have to pay a second application fee?
No.
So I don't know how much time we want to spend on this. Is this your understanding of what has occurred here?
Yes, what was shown at the Planning Commission initially was 2 structures, but there's actually 2 duplex lots that are being rezoned, so resulting in 4 structures. So we didn't want any confusion going forward to council that you approved 2 and now they're getting 4 approved.
The images all had 2.
Yeah, the images they provided only had 2 structures, but what was actually being approved was 4 structures.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item? Commissioners?
I'll move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 13. Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
Item 14 is an application by Teresa Tran to rezone 1917 Northwest 23rd Street from the CUP1 and R1 residential district to SPUD 1135.
I am Teresa Tran, and I have the house in 1917.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Would you, just so we can hear you a little better, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Teresa Tran, and address 1917 Northwest 23rd, I have the house from a single-family resident. I want to rezone to SPUD.
Okay. This is in my ward, and I hate to have to confess that because of just the press of business, I was not able to give this the attention that it probably deserved prior to the meeting today. I'm a little bit concerned about the uses. The SPUD simply states that all uses allowed in the neighborhood business district will be permitted. That includes some things like convenience sales and personal services, which without being narrowed can provide, quite a wide hole to drive a truck through. But it also includes things like animal raising, both commercial and personal, automotive equipment cleaning and repair, and a child care center. Some uses that I think would require some limitation if they're going to be permitted at all on this site. I would really like the opportunity, and I'm sorry that I was not able to contact you before the meeting today, but I would really like the opportunity to sit down with you and go through these. You've indicated that what you want to do with the property is a barber shop, and I have no problem at all with that. Most applicants would like a few other options included. If all we were approving today was your ability to have a barber shop, we could vote now. But I would really like the opportunity to sit down with you and work through some of the uses, maybe eliminate some of them, maybe ameliorate some of them. Would you be willing to take a 2-week continuance and sit down with me between now and then and see if we can work out this issue?
Can you repeat the request so we can...
Would you be willing to continue this item for 2 weeks? I understand that your process of getting here today has been fraught with difficulty, and I'm very sorry for that. I was not aware. But if we could take 2 weeks so that I could sit down with you and work through these, I would appreciate that very much. I think we would have a better product and something that we could approve a little easier.
No.
So you want to contact us in 2 weeks?
2 weeks?
You
Would
want to
that
see
be all
us in
right?
2 weeks? Yeah, that's
And
okay.
then can I rezone to SPUD?
So yes, just to narrow the uses of the SPUD. I didn't find anything else about it that I found particularly troubling. I just would like to see the uses narrowed a little bit. This is there is one other thing, I guess. I don't find particular language that addresses the house remaining in place. It indicates that that's part of the purpose, but it doesn't really state that it will. So I'd like just the opportunity to sit down with you and kind of tighten this up a little bit. Would you be willing to do that?
No.
We are unable to understand what your instruction is. So I appreciate if you send out email so we can read better than we can
Oh,
hear.
okay.
So
That'd be
we
fine.
appreciate that.
Or perhaps I can
Okay.
find an interpreter, someone to help us.
So
Is that
I have my email with Rezone, Tran.
I think I have it here. I
Yeah,
have
so
your
can you send
email.
me the email or what you, so.
That would be
we're
great.
happy to read that, and because we read that, we more understand and we.
I'll be glad to do that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Was this item continued by staff or for some other reason on August the 8th? Why was it continued once before? Can someone address that? Probably knew that was coming.
It had to go before the Urban Design Commission first before it came here,
Got it.
because it's in,
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Thank you. I'll take a motion, continue this item 2 weeks.
Motion to continue to the September 26th meeting.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to continue item number 24. Would you cast your votes, please? I'm sorry, item 14. Cast your votes, please. It's continued. Thank you for keeping me honest there, Commissioner Cravens.
Item 15 is an application by RMK Investments to rezone 6401 North Kelly from SPUD 553 to SPUD 1151.
Good afternoon. Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. On behalf of the applicant, this is an SPUD at the corner of 63rd and Kelly. that's in a current SPUD that allows a host of different uses, including retail, office, but also behind the subject site, you'll see on the map, it's auto repair. I'm not sure if it's still operating, but in the past it's been a auto repair. There's been a bunch of different cars out there. It's a fairly intense corner. 63rd and Kelly is, two major arterials. You've got heavy commercial on the south on both east and west side of Kelly. And so what we have is an SPUD, which based on the traffic counts and area, I think is fairly light on uses, but certainly compatible with the area. You'll notice that in the site plan provided, there's a current building on that east parcel of our subject site. That building will remain. And then we're also including the vacant tract to the west. So the uses are fairly minimal, again, given the proximity of the highway and the nature of that intersection. Staff does recommend approval. There are no technical evaluations. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You're indicating that you would like to have a 10-foot sign?
Yes, ma'am.
There's really not any sign competition at this location. Is it really necessary to have one that's more than 8?
I think you've got taller signs on the gas station to the south. You've got, I believe it's a Sonic and additional gas station on the east that do have signage.
But I mean, they don't impair the sight lines to this property or to your signage.
I don't perceive a 10-foot sign to be an excessively tall sign, considering you have a series of pole signs in the area, and we're committing to a monument sign.
I'd certainly rather have a 10-foot non-EMD sign than an 8-foot EMD sign.
All right, great. Have you received any contact at all from the residents?
No, I think some of the residents did contact staff at one point asking. They were provided with the SPUD, and then no further questions were raised.
It surprises me a little bit, I must say.
Well, if you look at the nature of the uses, these aren't, none of the uses are uses that jump out as problematic given the nature of the intersection, what's currently there. These will be mostly low-traffic type of uses, comparatively speaking.
Commissioners, anything else for our applicant? Is there anybody else here who wanted to be heard today on this item? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1151.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 15. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 16 has been continued. Item 17 is an application by Cinemark for a special permit to operate a movie theater serving mixed beverages in PUD 598. It's located at 6001 North Martin Luther King Avenue.
I'm Randy Malone, 209 Southwest 89th. I represent Cinemark Tinseltown on this application. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
The only question I have is really not so much relevant. Is this just going to be a thing now where every movie theater serves alcohol?
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions of the applicant?
With dollar movies, can we get dollar beer? Not really.
Is there anybody else here who wishes to be heard on this item today?
You can make that a TE.
If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move approval on item number 17.
Second.
A motion is second to approve item number 17. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 18 is an application by Stephen Cagle for a special permit to operate an outdoor gun range in the AA district located at 12301 North Indian Meridian Avenue.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Eric Groves. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicant. The applicant is Dr. Stephen Cagle, who is here. Answer questions, should you have any. First, I'd like to describe the land in question, and I have a staff report, had some drawings, but and I want to try to do this without getting away from the mic. This is land in the far northeast quadrant of the city. And here's Memorial Road, here's North Choctaw Road, Indian Meridian. All of this area that's shaded in blue is owned by my client, including the quarter section where he would like to have the range. I've made a little mark here, which is not to scale. If it were to scale, it would just be a little dot. But I made it bigger so you all could see it. So that's the land in question. Dr. Cagle owns the quarter section in which the range would be located, and the quarter section, the three-quarter sections surrounding it are also owned by him. The reason for this application is that local ordinances prohibit the discharge of firearms within city limits. So we have asked for a special permit that will allow the firing of guns. The object is to conform the land use to existing law. There are berms already in place. There'll be two ranges, one for rifles, one for pistols. The berms are in place. It's interesting to observe that these ranges will be located in a bowl, a depressed area, surrounded by trees. And so it'd be next to impossible for a round to escape the bowl. And the depressed area and the trees serve as a buffer for any sound that may occur. The range will be under the control of Dr. Cagle's son, David Cagle. David is a student at UCO, majoring in criminal justice and forensic science. He has over 700 hours of instruction in the safe and effective use of firearms. He recently completed cleat training, so he's certified to be an Oklahoma peace officer. The staff report, which you no doubt read, requested that we provide a cross-section of this area, which we did. I made a supplemental filing on this application, included the cross-section. Here's the cross-section done by a surveyor, and I'd be glad to pass it around if the smaller version that we filed, if you're unable to read it, this is available for you to see. So we've met that staff request. We also had a request from Commissioner Powers and to look at this, and we had a meeting with Dr. Cagle, myself, Commissioner Powers, Commissioner Pennington, and Council Member Nikki Nice. We arranged for Commissioner Powers and Council Member Nice to see the land. So Dr. Cagle met them out there, gave them a tour in 90-degree heat, but they all made it. So Commissioner Powers is familiar with the land. As a result of those communications and the staff report, we did a supplemental filing, and I have copies of it if it didn't make your packet. And in that filing, we did two things that Commissioner Powers requested. One is to specify that this range will not be a commercial range, which it won't be, will not be open to the public, will be for the use of Dr. Cagle and his family. Second, that we have a lead remediation plan. The rounds will be fired into these berms. They're not going to be lead, but nonetheless, and as far as the environmental science part of it is concerned, Dr. Cagle can answer your questions. But I don't think we have a problem in that area, but we agreed as a condition of the permit to have a lead remediation specialist examine this property once every 10 years, so long as the permit is in force. And if it should be that some remediation is required, then we can hire the consultant to do it. There's not going to be any runoff into any stream from these ranges. Also, this is a lovely area, and it's a habitat for wildlife, turkey, deer. It's really part of Dr. Cagle's front yard in a sense, and the only change that's going to happen on this land is permission to fire rifles and pistols. No one's going to hear it because there's nobody around. And let's see if there's anything else you need to know. We have the manual from the EPA on best practices for remediation of lead in land, and we'll be guided by that, although I don't think there's going to be any lead rounds. There could be copper. There's no protest. Notice went out 1,600 feet. Nobody objects. So we ask your approval. Be glad to answer your questions, or Dr. Cagle can answer them.
Commissioners, I did go out to the property. We invited also Commissioner Pennington, but he was just not able to join us that day. It was incredibly hot. We bounced all over this property in a four-wheel drive vehicle. There was a lot of wildlife out there. It's clear that Dr. Cagle is both a proud and responsible steward of the land. They're clearly doing the things that they need to do to keep this, minimal impact. And the terrain itself really assuaged all of our concerns about any overshot or even noise. I mean, it's very well contained, and so we had fun, and it was quite entertaining. But my concerns came down to just two things. Dr. Cagle's son is also, as I understand it, an instructor, so I wanted to be sure that the use of the property was private and personal, and also that there wouldn't be any lead contamination either of the soil or groundwater or of the wildlife or domestic animal food chain, which is a thing, I guess, with lead. But as I understand it, this is not the kind of place where shotguns are going to be fired, so the possibility that there is lead contamination, I think, is answered by the proposal that they've made for remediation here. Do we have any other questions of our applicant?
Did you say your firearms would be limited to handguns and rifles? It will not include assault rifles or AR-15s or?
No, we don't have any reason to use those. We would use rifles, maybe high-velocity rifles. We're not interested in bringing instrumentalities of war onto the land, so it would be handguns and rifles. Could you stand by? No automatic weapons.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item today?
I have a couple of questions just on the backstops. Are they constructed or are they earthen berms?
They are earthen berms and they are in place.
Okay.
And they are substantial.
This special permit is perpetual, right?
Say again?
The special permit is perpetual, essentially?
We want it to be perpetual, but technically the commission can limit the time on a special permit. We don't see any need to do so. I might tell you that this land is going to stay in the Cagle family for as long as is legally possible, subject to the rule against perpetuities. So, I don't see any reason for limiting the special permit, although the commission has the right to do that if it wishes to do so.
Sure seems prudent. I was sitting in the backyard of a friend's house 2 years ago. He lives in northeast Edmond. And I'm standing there, we're grilling hamburgers, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a bunch of explosions took place. And it turns out that his home is a half a mile from the Edmond Police Department's range where they detonate little explosives and shoot guns and this and that. at some point, 25 years from now, someone is going to go, what group of nitwits approved the ability for our neighbors to shoot guns perpetually? Eventually, growth will get here. It seems to me to put a permit in place forever, it seems odd.
Well, you could do 10 years. That's the time we set in the lead remediation plan, if you wish to. But I'm representing to you today that this is land that the Cagle family is going to hold in perpetuity. But you have the right. I mean, special permits are issued, can be issued subject to conditions if you want to limit it.
I mean, I understand that they intend to own it forever, but it reminds me of the drawings we get, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you can turn around and sell the property. There's nothing that prevents them from doing that.
No, there's no prohibition against alienation.
Yeah. So I'm just speaking out loud, but that sure seems like it would make a lot of sense for a use like this to at least protect perpetuity. It's a long time.
Special permits can be revoked if they become a problem. You can also put a time limit on it, and they also expire by default if the use ceases for 12 months.
Just my 2 cents, but I'm...
So knowing that they're subject to revocation, if it becomes an issue, does that give you any...
Yeah, I mean, assuming that they're... I just don't know what kind of teeth that has. We don't see a lot of special permits to shoot, firearms come through here. So I'm not sure exactly how we would revoke it or what power the city would have to do that, but...
Well, Eric seems to support the idea of the checkup in 10 years. Does anybody have a problem with that? I say if not, why don't we add it to the TEs?
I would be in support of that, but I'm just one person here, so I'm looking for feedback.
What would that entail?
I would support a review in 10 years.
What would that entail?
Just put an expiration on the special permit ordinance, and they would have to come back in 10 years and reapply.
Would it be administrative, or would it have to
No, it would be a new application.
I'm not looking forward to doing that, the expense involved, but, I want to get the special permit, so I'll do what it takes to get it. Commissioner Cravens has a point, there's no prohibition against alienation of land, but I'm making the representation to you, and I think Dr. Cagle will too, that this land isn't going anywhere. So...
I think if we were going to put a time limit on it that would cause it to expire automatically, I might be more comfortable with 20 years.
I got a better idea. How about if you did it this way, that it gets reviewed in 10 years and if there's no objections, no problems with it, it automatically renews for another 10 years.
Is that possible? Is that possible?
That seems like that would be problematic to enforce. I don't know what requirement we could have of the applicant to come back in 10 years, or if we're going to be actively monitoring.
Here's my problem with, I'm going to, like I say, I'll do what it takes to get the permit. But if 10 years from now, if we come back and say we want to reapply and we come in and say no one's complained about anything and, we've done whatever lead remediation is necessary, these days it's a $2,700 fee, I think. Well, heaven knows what that'll be in 10 years. I'd really rather not put my client to that expense. We have had permits and licenses issued by the city that are subject to revocation if there's a problem. So if there's not a problem, we have we have all kinds of permits.
Right. I'm not saying the revocation proceeding itself is a problem, but the condition of it being renewed by staff, I think, is problematic.
Well, I wasn't thinking of it being renewed by staff.
And that was something we were talking about.
As a matter of law, as a matter of its own language, it would renew itself if no one has filed any complaints. It's sort of like in neighborhood covenants where they renew themselves after so many years, and if you don't want to renew them, then you have to do something about it. So, it makes sense to me that 10 years goes by, there's not a problem with it. No one's complained, the city has no issues with it, that we have to come down and go through the whole process again and pay a filing fee. I'd like to avoid that if I could.
At that point, it seems kind of indistinguishable from the revocation proceedings.
Say again?
It seems very similar to the revocation proceedings than if you're proposing automatic.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I think it's reasonable in the middle here that to reapply after 20 years to do something like this is not that much of that much trouble.
I can live with
Put
20 years.
20-year expiration on the permit, and he has to come back.
I can live with that.
I guess I'm a little more comfortable with that because after having been out there, there's no doubt in my mind that 20 years from now, it's going to look just like it does now. So if you're comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that. I got no problem with that. Again, I just was voicing the issue. I think it's responsible on our part to at least put some sort of review in there so we're not the group of nitwits that everybody's talking about in 25 or 35 years, okay?
Oh, I'll be dead by then. So.
20 years, it's a deal.
So that would be a technical evaluation to add, right?
Do we do technical evaluations on special permits? I don't know.
Well, there's some on there.
Yes, sort of.
Sort of. It's just a condition.
Maybe not be labeled as
It's
such.
a condition of the special
You wanted
permits.
certain conditions. I regard staff's request for a cross-section as a technical evaluation and your requests, and we've met them. So.
I guess we have technical evaluations, don't we? So that answers that.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the special permit subject to the technical evaluation / conditions, adding number 7 that the special permit will expire in 20 years.
Second. I have a motion and a second to approve item number 18 with the additional technical evaluation / condition that it expires in 20 years. Cast your votes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
Item 19 is an application by Jolly Bird Homes Design to rezone 1400 Northwest 16th Street from R1 to SPD 1149.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. Ms. Sammy Duncan was the applicant, and she is also here, as well as Mark Zitza in my office. We were here 3 weeks ago, discussing this case and agreed to continue it to have an additional neighborhood meeting based on the number of signatures that had been submitted in protest. Also at that time, and since that time, there's been a number of letters of support submitted to the staff, which I hope you all have seen. We did have a meeting about 10 days ago. We had 2 residents show up to that meeting, and we talked through the whole application, and it boiled down to a concern by one of the property owners about the location of the sign, the proposed sign in front of the building. We have since gone back and forth with the neighbor and have agreed to put the sign on the building, not in the yard, and have submitted an example of what it would look like. Would be something simple like this, a total of 16 square feet. And this has been submitted to the staff and submitted to the neighbors for them to purview. And they, in writing through an email, agreed that they would withdraw their protest. And that was the Middlebrooks. So that said, there was a couple other housekeeping issues that we did do in the PUD that were provided early on to the staff and are included. Since that meeting, we also added a change to one of the use units, the mixed-use unit. We made it specifically to professional office only. So it took out any retail that would be involved there, and that was really at the request of the chairman. So, and our clients were happy to do that. So with that, I think this very complicated case has become very simple, I think, unless there's a dozen people here to protest.
I don't have a dozen people signed up. We'll ask. Do we have any questions of our applicant before I do? If not, is there anybody here today who wanted to be heard on this item? If not, I'll take a motion.
I would like to say, yeah, it was it became a complicated case, but everybody, the system worked in this one, and I want to thank the applicant for working with the neighborhood as well as they did, and I think it's very appropriate use. Excited to see renovation to the home. So with that, I will make a recommendation for approval.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 19. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Item 20 is an application by Anna and Gary Butler to rezone 400 East I-240 Service Road from SPUD 78 to I-1 Light Industrial.
How you doing? I'm Gary, and this is my wife, Anna.
Would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Gary Butler, and it's from the business address or the
Doesn't matter.
3604 Chatfield Circle, Oklahoma City. That's our personal address. 73179.
And tell us what it is you're here asking for today.
We're asking to rezone the R1 subject lot. We own the other ones, and we're trying to combine them to an I2. And we're just trying to make it all one. My wife talked to the people with the city, and they said just to maybe try to combine all the lots together. The same zoning.
So, the question I have, I guess, really is kind of more one for staff. What kind of signage are they entitled to at this location?
I-2 along the highway would be a maximum of 50 feet in height and 200 square feet.
So they could put up a giant pole sign, is what you're saying. Not crazy about that.
Can I say one thing?
Is there signage in place?
Yeah, there's signage in place already, and we had to move, that was the I-240 expansion, and we had to move the sign back actually to the front. It's even with my building now because they had such a large expansion, and they took some of my parking also. So that's, yeah, the state did when they did the expansion on the I-240 corridor.
And so you intend just to keep the signage that you have now?
Yeah, the signage will be, will stay.
Is it your intent to use this whole thing as part of Mako's?
Yes.
So all the way back to 66th Street, that's the R1 now?
Yeah,
Are you going to leave the house? Are you going to leave the residence there?
There's not a house on it.
Oh, there's not a house?
No, it's been vacant for probably 10 years or more, and 15 years. It's been, they knocked the house down 15 years ago or so.
So you're not looking for any signage on 66th Street?
No.
Okay.
In fact, the right behind that R1 is actually a storage facility.
Oh, okay, I see.
So there's not, it's bordered, no, it's bordered completely by industrial, except for the on the right-hand side.
And so is the circular thing, is this is it a cul-de-sac?
I think it was 50 years ago.
Okay.
It's not really, it's sort of a straight street that dead ends.
Okay. No, I do not. Okay. Do we have any other questions of our applicant? Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item today? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move approval on item 20.
Second.
A motion is second to approve item number 20. Cast your votes. It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 21 is an application by North Harvey Properties to rezone 3101 Northwest 150th Street from R4 and CUP 36 to PUD 1726.
Good afternoon, Ms. Powers, members of the commission. My name is Dwight Butler with
Okay,
Anchor
Mr.
Engineering.
Butler, you look way too comfortable, so we don't permit that in here.
An RN at the VA got this for me, and I couldn't help but wear a Navy shirt so people could see it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. But I am Dwight Butler with Anchor Engineering for the applicant on this item. We have read and do agree with all the TEs, Be happy to answer any questions and respectfully request approval.
Commissioner Craven, do you have anything for us?
No, my curiosity, based on the name of it, is are the folks developing this, your clients, are they the ones who developed the neighborhood to the north as well?
I'm sorry, sir, I was a gunner's mate up.
Did your client develop via Esperanza as well, to the north of this?
Did you? My client, just a moment, please. He has been a resident in Esperanza 1 for 17 years.
Okay, but he didn't build it. He didn't develop it. That's what I wanted.
No, he did not develop it, but he is an owner.
Okay. Is there anybody here that signed up or wants to talk?
I don't have anybody signed up. I haven't asked yet if there's anybody else who wants to be heard.
I don't have any issue with it. I think it's a good application. I think you do a good job of stepping it down before it gets there. I didn't hear from any neighbors on it or anything in the neighborhood. Based on the name of what this was, I wondered if it was the same developer that was doing it. But application looks fine to me. I don't have an issue.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item today? I guess not, so I'll take a motion.
There's no further discussion from anybody. I'll make a motion to recommend approval for PUD 1726.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve item number 21. Would you cast your votes, please? It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 22 is an associated application for preliminary plat of Esperanza Gardens, located at northwest 150th Street and west of North May Avenue.
Once again, Dwight Butler with Anchor Engineering for the applicant. We have read and agreed with all the TEs, and we're more than happy to answer any questions and respectfully request approval.
Companion item, nobody's here. I'd note that the staff says that it conforms with the subdivision regulations, so if there's no discussion, I'd make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
I actually do have some questions. It's just one, really. Is there any recreational common area in this?
We do have one small common area just to the north of the left bulb where we're going to do a water feature.
Okay. Okay. That's really all I have. Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item? If not, I have a motion and a second to approve item number 22. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 23 is an application by Big B LLC to rezone 3034 Southwest 13th Street from SPUD 191 to SPUD 1137.
Is our applicant here?
Yes. My apologies. Summoned outside by staff. Let me get staff back in because we're still talking about this. All right. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, on behalf of the applicant, who is also here with me, Mr. Wayne Knoll. This is a site that's got a bit of history that is a bit strange. It's probably worth going through. This site was originally zoned in 1997 for Mr. Knoll to allow for some industrial type uses, including the storage of materials. Then again in 2015, we came through on behalf of Mr. Knoll for a spud on the south side that you see, spud 832. At the time, it was requested of us that we include the site in the Scenic River Overlay Design Review District. We were not in agreement with that, and when we got to City Council, we were successful in getting it approved without it being included in the Scenic River District. So fast forward now, we have another spud in which, after we filed it, we were asked by staff to get together to talk about the merits of the Scenic River Design District, and we negotiated with Ms. Chronister in planning about the ability to bring the spud into conformance with the Scenic River in light of their desires for this area, and after a lot of discussion, my client agreed to do that. but for the ability to have a billboard. So right now, the site would permit industrial uses, permit the ability to store industrial-type materials, including rock, stone, et cetera, to a height of 12 feet. What we've agreed to do in the SPUD is conform to all Scenic River Design District guidelines, including the requirement that we go before the Scenic River Committee for approval of any development. In addition, we agreed that we will commit to all the setbacks, design criteria, height, et cetera, that come with the overlay that is the Scenic River. But we'd like to be able to have a sign. And so if you think about, on balance, what this would present for the city, I think it is a net positive. You're going to get a site more in line and in conformance with all the Scenic River guidelines. And in exchange, we will have a billboard. It'll be a billboard on an interstate highway and on an interstate highway that is at the crossroads of another interstate highway where I-44 and I-40 meet. I've handed you an exhibit of just a Google Earth aerial. You see the proposed location. In addition, you see two other billboards, one of which is literally on the river, one is slightly further off than we are. My client informed me that there's actually two I missed in close proximity. The first, North-South Street east of our site, is May Avenue. And May Avenue up against I-40, you actually have back-to-back billboards on the south side of I-40. Our spacing requirements are met. We meet all spacing requirements, both municipal and state. And if you look at the area, it's not surprising that you would find billboards on a highway. That's where we expect to find them, as long as we still have highways, until Mr. Highsmith gets his way and the highway system is done away with. But again, I think if you look at the SPUD, I think it is a total overall net positive for the city in that you're going to bring a site into more conformance with the Scenic River, and in exchange, we'd like the ability to have a sign along the interstate highway. So there are no TEs other than the sign, which we obviously don't agree to. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
What is the actual intended use of the new development? I mean, is this speculative?
It is.
Okay. So we don't know what might actually go there?
Correct.
Anything within the listed use?
Anything within the SPUD except for it will have to conform to all the design criteria established within the Scenic River. And if not approved, go ahead.
Yeah, essentially, as we talked beforehand, this is a request for a trade-off, saying we will opt in if you guys will give us the billboard.
Basically, because now it's an industrial site that will never meet the criteria and the guidelines and the desires of the Scenic River overlay.
And Scenic River overlay is, of course, they approve the idea based on that.
No.
Eliminating the non-accessory.
If we eliminate the non-accessory sign.
Right.
Which we can't agree to do because there'd be no point coming forward and downzoning our site for no reason.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of this. I don't think this is an appropriate place for any kind of commercial development, frankly. It doesn't have any frontage. It's got visual frontage, but it doesn't have any actual access to, anything like even an arterial, let alone highway frontage. I think it's a terrible place for a billboard.
Well, I mean, if it's on the highway. I mean, it's right off the service road, so I would disagree that it's a terrible place for a billboard.
Yeah, well,
it wouldn't be a desire to have a billboard.
I understand that you and I don't agree on that.
That's right. That's why I didn't want to.
I guess the argument, for is that, well, it's a terrible place for the industrial storage that it's currently used for, and if we opt into, if we're pushing them into the Scenic River Overlay Design District, at least, anything that comes after this has to be better.
Does it?
Better than 12 feet of raw material being stored outside.
But is the 12 feet of raw material still there?
Right now there are, I don't know if it's 12 feet high, but right now there is still raw material stored there.
Yeah, but I mean, you can continue that existing use It's just if you build a new structure, you'll have to bring it into the guidelines, right?
Well, and we've committed to, if there is any material, we have to lower everything below the line of a fence. Right now, it's specific in the spud of 12 feet. That would go away.
Is there anybody here? Because I have some comments, but they're determinative based off if there's anybody here. That's why I asked.
Oh, okay. Commissioners, does anybody else have anything they want to say before I ask? Is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on this item? Apparently not, Commissioner.
And to your question, I mean, my client would be willing to find another location for the storage of materials.
Well, I mean, look, no, I'm glad you asked the question. There's nobody here because this is my thing. Like, when I looked at this application, signs on highways, I don't take issue with them on just a general basis. What concerned me about this is the interference that this sign would have on this residential area. This residential area is a pocket that is smashed between a bunch of highly industrialized uses that extend along the north side of the road up along Reno, extend to the stockyards, which is due east of the glamping site we just approved, which is going on the north end of this development, and then to the west you're getting into the industrialized part of the city and Meridian corridor and all that southwest. So this little pocket is a bit odd. If there was somebody here that was in the neighborhood and that would weigh very heavily on my opinion on what to do with this. As it is, I think this is an area that is transitioning away from residential, and so what I'm concerned about is I don't know that we're really getting anything. I mean, I don't know that right now you're saying we have a very unattractive use. When we're done, we're going to have I-2. I know what you can do in I-2, so you can have another very unattractive use. It's just that if we build a new structure, we're going to have to comply with Scenic River Overlay. We don't have to do that until we build a new structure. So I think what we're really doing is approving a sign that eventually, at some point, there may be something economic on it besides that. But at the outset, I don't think that there really is a plan to
Yeah. So right. Not only that, but we have to go and get approval of any design. So yeah, it's a bet on the future that when this area does redevelop, because I think it will, anything that gets built there will have to get design approval and meet all those guidelines. So sure.
I guess I'll just say the only reason that I find myself leaning to be supportive of it is simply because there is no one here in opposition to it. I think if there would be a better neighborhood argument for it. Reminds me of the case we had where it was along 39th recently, and we had them tilt it and they put fins to guard against the residential spillage and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I thought we did a good job there trying to be thoughtful about the neighborhood. I don't know that they're really, I don't know. I don't know. That's where I'm at. I'm torn on this one.
If you look at May Avenue, what you'll see is it's a series of auto salvage yards. To your point, that this area is not residential.
I'm assuming you're wanting to do digital on both sides of this?
Level 1, so it's the static.
It's my ward, like you mentioned right before we started. It's almost amazing that this is in my ward. It's really,
I had to look. I didn't believe it was in Ward 6.
Yeah. In the end, on anything like this, I'm just looking for what's the net benefit. Like, are we getting something out of it? And I do have to say that I think the applicant opting into Scenic River Overlay Design District, although not an immediate win, is some kind of a win. I also am not sure that I care about, I've said this before, billboards on highways. Highways are ugly places anyway. I just don't know if I care. So I'm kind of agnostic.
First of all, I just have to say, it is our job up here to make these decisions, whether or not people have the opportunity to take time off work and come down here and find a place to park and are able and sophisticated enough to come and appear and protest zoning applications.
That's fair.
We've had a very, very long-standing policy of discouraging billboards along highways because we think they should not be ugly places, and they should not be littered with signage. So I'm just adamantly opposed to this. It's going to be a terrible imposition on the surrounding residential property owners visually, and it's going to be a real impact on them. Plus, if you just look at this piece of property, nobody would look at it and go, oh, it's a perfect place for commercial and industrial development. I don't think.
I'm not trying to go back on, because obviously every case is different. But, I mean, we proved a pull-apart in the middle of a neighborhood on the south side with unanimous support. And so I just don't know, because there were no protesters, which was the point of this. I just don't know that, to me, that's never material. Like, we've got to do what's best for an area. And I disagree that signage is the most impactful thing. That if approving a sign here is going to set the course for negativity for the entire area or something. I don't see it that way.
I agree with Asa. When I look at this picture, what I see that's visual blight is not the signs. It's all that electrical stuff. I mean, there's more visual blight there than there is in those two billboards.
But we don't have any control.
I understand that. But
we should.
But that's
a bigger issue.
The point is, though, the signs are not. I mean, I just remember this from, on some Board of Adjustment cases, too. In the past, you're legislating taste. You're deciding what looks good and what doesn't look good, what is blight, what isn't blight, what clutters a highway and what doesn't clutter a highway. I don't see signage that way. I just don't. And so I think it's an opinion. But I'm always more sensitive to those arguments when there is any residential use anywhere near it. And you make a good point that there are instances where a lot of people don't have the ability to take off work and leave and come down and argue these things, which is why I'm torn. But I will also be bold and say that, we just saw an application come through. I think we're going to see this area continue to transition away from residential, and maybe it's just that it's too early. And I would just say I think everybody weighs those things differently, but for me it's the impact on residential versus allowing the property owner to create value and all that. And property rights arguments, we don't need to go there. But in this instance, I kind of come down on that side, but I'm a little torn. That's where I'll end it.
The other, just one thing that I'll say about that is that the Scenic River Overlay Design Review Committee turned down this deal. And
they also turned down the deal in 2015, too. And so at least now, and it was unanimous, there were some, at least one, not more, on my side. But here they're actually getting long-term what they want. And when you look at this map...
I think that might be better decided by them rather than you.
Well, they don't have any say whatsoever now, and they're going to get a say in the after. So on balance, it has to be better if the desire is to control development.
And yet, they turned down this deal. So that's probably a stronger statement about billboards than anything else.
I agree with Commissioner Highsmith in that what is proposed here is much better than what exists right now, and I'm in support of that. My only concern is if this is approved, what keeps the applicant from constructing the billboard and not doing any of the other improvements until a later time and maintaining use of the property as is?
Nothing.
So is there any way that we can tie the billboard that it cannot be constructed? It has to be tied to the permitting of the other site development?
Since we cannot require them to do something, we can't require them to build anything or to construct it, and there aren't any plans right now to do anything else with this property other than, my understanding is, the signage.
The signage itself cannot be the trigger.
Right, and we can't require them just because they would get zoned appropriately for it. We couldn't require them to go out and affirmatively build something.
I'm just saying, obviously we require, if you're doing a new building, the city's like, well, you got to have so much parking.
Right, but that is when the project's already underway. But we don't have anything here to go require them to construct something on that site.
It's the same argument on the demolition. You can't condition, we'll let you demolish it if you promise to go build a building. The city can't force somebody to go build stuff.
But we force parking requirements. That's part of my point.
When they're building stuff.
Right. You're building a billboard. So why can't we require maybe some
Parking's necessary presumably for whatever it is you're building, not this. They're separate.
Well, obviously, I don't want parking, I'm just saying.
You mentioned earlier that you weren't opposed to giving up the storage of rock generally. Is that fair?
Right.
So does that mean that you would be in agreement to reduce the downzone it to I-1 and remove outdoor storage?
Would you be willing to get rid of the
Give us your name and address for the...
My name's Wayne Knoll. I live at 2201 Don Marie here in Oklahoma City. I'm a lifelong resident. I've had this property since the 90s. I've used it as a quiet, I guess you'd call it brickyard, stone yard. I do masonry repair in particular. We have lots of old bricks there. I'm trying to look into the next phase of where I'm at and where I'm going. I was hoping to transition this property into something a little bit different, a little bit better than what it is. As to say when that's going to happen, I don't know. I'm 69 years old as of recently, so congratulate me if you want. Thank you. But the reality of it is things are changing. And as David said, I would be willing to phase that storage area out. I don't know that I'm going to be doing this for the next 5-10 years. So, to get rid of it and move it and to be able to take this property, go somewhere else, that's probably what's going to happen one way or the other. The other thing is it's come up, and I know David's wanting me to shut up, but if you look to the east of here, there's very little residents left. This whole area is being vacated to some degree. When you look through there, there's hardly any houses left. A lot of the houses that you see are vacant and have been vacant for years. The house directly to the east has been vacant for several years since the lady passed away. The vacant house to the southeast is vacant. So what is happening, and it has happened for the past 20 years, this is changing, and it's going commercial. And this, to me, seems like the obvious sign to let people know the direction this property, I would think the city would want to go, which would be maybe, because of its location next to the river, a more commercial application versus old dilapidated buildings from the stockyards era. That's about it.
The answer is yes.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask. So back to...
Well, to me, that improves the win. If you lose outside storage, so we're committed to all activities being conducted indoors, you're going to lose that effective with the rezoning.
That's right.
So that helps me feel better.
Yes, we agree. We can make that a TE.
Do you have an aversion to the light directing louvers that would keep the light from the digital signs completely out of the neighborhood?
No.
It doesn't cost anything more.
No. Is that the one that Mr. Work had? Is that the one you're talking about, the last page?
He used different terminology, but the manufacturers of the digital signs have louvers that can direct light to the right or to the left and not let it shine ambiently out. Okay. V, it does more of it like this. So if I'm okay with this, if you can commit to that, you've kept the light out of the neighborhood completely.
I don't know what language to add, but yes, we're fine with that.
Just light directing louvers is the proper term.
How do you spell louvers?
L-O-U-V-E-R.
Oh, it's not like O-E or, okay.
I think. I went to Norman High.
Okay, is there anybody else here today who want to be heard on this, or have I asked that question already? I did, because it was pertinent. Anybody else have anything they want to add? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
I know it's in my ward, but you took the notes.
Okay. I'll I'll make a motion to recommend approval of City Council on SPUD 1137, subject to the technical evaluations, amending the MDS to make the regulations of the Scenic Overlay District and I-1 Industrial District, except as modified herein, which shall specifically exclude outside storage, and adding T number 3, which will require the installation of light directing louvers, be added to the sign.
Except we need to delete TE1.
That's right, I'm sorry, and yeah, deleting TE1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 23, deleting TE1 and adding 2 TEs, one to reduce the base zoning to I-1 and one to require light directing louvers be added to the signage. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 24 is an application by 132 Northwest 67th to close right-of-way of North Robinson Avenue extending 133 feet south of Northwest 67th Street.
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to recuse myself for the next two items, item 24 and 25.
Don't go anywhere. You'll get appointed to something.
Good afternoon again. Tim Johnson with Johnson & Associates here on behalf of the applicant, and I want to publicly apologize to Mr. Highsmith for not getting back with you on this. I know you reached out to Mark, and I apologize. So the staff has recommended this for denial, I think, for two reasons. One is the concern about the grid, street grid, and the other is there was a comment by utilities that they had a problem with this. We have since talked to utilities and have agreed that the reserve will remain for the whole width of the 30 feet when we go to district court. There's a water line on one side, there's a sewer line on the other side. I don't know how we couldn't agree with that, so it'd have to remain as a reserve, which was our intent. There's no intent to build a building here, it's just to allow the property to attach to the current office building that my client owns and allow him to better maintain that tract of land. Just a little bit of background, we did talk to the property owner to the west about whether they would be willing to share in the cost of extending Robinson North from 66th to 67th Street. He has no interest in doing that. It would take another 30 foot of right-of-way, or at least 20 feet of right-of-way, to put a legal public street through there. So east of Robinson was platted under one plat, west of Robinson was platted under a different plat, and they did not include additional street right-of-way for Robinson. As you can see by this exhibit, when this plat was done, it was the intention that this would be your north-south collector to between 63rd and 67th Street. And you can see that that property is up there shown as a separate piece of property that's been zoned as a separate entity. Over time, this whole area south 63rd, all that office park has been developed. In fact, my first office was in that complex 100 years ago. 66th Street and North Robinson have acted as the connector through there for 40 years. There's not a traffic issue, there's not an access issue, and the intent, really the only benefactors for extending Robinson to 67th Street would be my client and the vacant R1 property to the west. And as I mentioned, that property owner intends to take his access fully to 67th Street. So this closure and future vacation really does not adversely affect the traffic in the area. It just really closes up and cleans up a piece of property adjacent to my client's property. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions of our applicant? Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item today? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
If I may make sure I'm clear, the recommendation was denial, but the staff no longer recommends denial, is that correct?
The utility staff, I'm not sure what the planning staff thinks.
In our pre-meeting, the only objection raised was about the utilities in place and having access to them and the easements, and they were able to resolve that before the meeting. So.
Yeah, so staff's cool now? Is that a recommendation from the staff?
I don't speak for the staff, so I couldn't say.
Given the fact that it's already too narrow, it's only 30 feet, I think so. I think the biggest concern was the utility easement.
Yeah, if there were existing right-of-way, that was being cut off here, I think I would feel differently about it. But since there's not, it would have to be, condemned in order for the street to be put through, and I just don't see that happening. So, did I ask? Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this item? Certainly no written protest, so I guess not.
I'll move approval of item 24.
Do we need to add the condition that was 30-foot easement?
Yes.
We'll agree to that.
So is that a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 24, with the addition of a technical evaluation, granting a 30-foot easement.
Yes, the entire vacated tract would remain a reserve.
There you go. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 25 is an application by Chisholm Springs to rezone 9521 Southwest 15th Street from AA to PUD 1734.
Hello, my name is Lance Wendell, 600 South Washington, Ardmore, Oklahoma. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Here to speak to you about this PUD located around the northeast corner of 15th Street and Morgan. It's approximately a 40-acre tract that we're looking to rezone for single-family homes. So I came before you guys in late April, and I had already held a neighborhood meeting to kind of talk with the neighbors about what we were doing. But when I came before you in late April, some of the neighbors came up and were a little bit concerned that they hadn't had enough notification of your commission meeting, and so the commission decided at that point in time, hey, let's delay for 2 weeks, defer it, and let's look at it again in 2 weeks after they've made sure that they've had a chance for everyone to be informed. So we came back in early May, and you guys looked at the piece of land. It was in line with the comprehensive plan and said, hey, we're going to give a 7-0 vote to zone this to an R1 or to push zoning for an R1. But the neighbors still had some concerns, and so as I was leaving the meeting, I think Mr. Cravens or Mr. LaForge asked that I make sure I get with the neighbors again. So I got some names and numbers after the end of the meeting again, and the city council, Mr. McAtee, also asked, hey, make sure you meet with the neighbors again. Let's work on it. So I went back, and we had a second neighborhood meeting prior to the city council meeting, and the neighbors are still showing quite a bit of concern. So we got in front of city council, and Councilman McAtee said, hey, to try to help alleviate some of this, Lance, why don't you pull your application as an R1 zone and bring it back as a PUD in order to allow for some restrictions that maybe can get, some peace amongst the neighbors. So I've done that. This is the PUD that is basically in lieu of the R1 zoning. Let's put some restrictions on it, quite a bit more restrictive than what a normal R1 has. Basically, our plating restrictions are the exact same as an R1, but we've added some restrictions that said, hey, can't build smaller than 1,350 square feet, have to have 95% brick, have to provide privacy fences. I'm going to provide a community storm shelter. Some things to try to make sure that A, I'm, kind of codifying in this PUD that I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, and B, get the neighbors happy that their concerns are being voiced. So I held a third meeting on August 26th with neighbors to discuss this PUD and the restrictions that we've kind of written in here, right? We discussed those restrictions. They tweaked them a little bit. I kind of agreed to some of the tweaks they wanted to make. But I will tell you that they're still not happy with my rezoning. Basically, we're hearing the same issues that we've heard since April in our original meetings, and they're kind of some NIMBY 101. I liked it as a big open field. Hey, there's going to be increased traffic. Normal things that we've heard. What about the trees? And I don't discount those concerns. Those are valid concerns. But I think from a comprehensive plan, using this for housing is kind of the best use of the land for housing. There's only one concern that I do want to bring back up. It's not necessarily a new concern, but I do want to address it. There have been several people that, that were attending the last meeting that I had, the meeting on August 26th. People attending the meeting were concerned that they had not been notified about the meeting that they were attending. And so I just want to quickly explain what happened so that we don't think that I haven't tried to get notification out to the local residents. The first meeting that I had with them way back in April, I had no contact, so I had to send out postcards based on the 300-foot list. And I sent out postcards, and I had 5 people attend my meeting. Subsequently, after a couple of meetings, the meeting with them and then the meeting here, I got some email addresses, and I found out, no, there is no HOA that I can address to try to get the word out, but they have a neighborhood website app that they use to convey information. So for my next meeting that I had, I sent out the postcards again, but I used an email process, and I hit their neighborhood. I had a member that's kind of here today that lives in the neighborhood that said she would take the lead on getting the word out. I got the email to her. She put it up on the website that they use, and I had 50 to 60 people attend that meeting. So I said, aha, the answer to get folks to show up is the email website, not the postcards. The postcards didn't work the first time. So for the third meeting, I just used the email website, and we had 18 people attend the meeting. So I just wanted to explain that I don't feel like I was in any way trying not to get notice out to the neighborhood. That was the method that we used to try to get notice to them. I have nothing else to add that we haven't talked about in our previous couple of meetings for the rezone, and so I ask that you approve this PUD. Basically, it's the exact same restrictions that you already approved back in May for R1, with the exception of adding newer and making it a little bit more restrictive in what I'm going to be able to build. The City of Oklahoma City needs more housing. This is the type of housing that they need, and I ask for your support in it.
So tell me again, what are the restrictions that you've added?
I have to build no smaller than 1,350 square feet. I have to use an exterior of 95% brick, a minimum of 95% brick or rock. I have to provide a privacy fence with every house. And I have to provide a community storm shelter. Those are kind of the delineated ones, along with, some kind of common things that are in the PUD, but those are the ones that are delineated. I had told the residents, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and Councilman McAtee said, put that in writing, do a PUD. I said, yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any questions of our applicant? I have a number of people who are signed up to speak. Do we want to hear from them first, or? Kayla Lloyd.
Hi, I am Kayla Lloyd, and I'm a resident in Sunnybrook Addition, adjacent to the proposed PUD, and my address is 1512 Sunnybrook Lane, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73128.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I am in protest to the rezoning for a few reasons that maybe have not been mentioned at this point, and those have to do with the environmental issue. I think it has been brought up, some points to that, but in the process of talking about this, the environmental issues I don't think have been, we're in a riparian and an aquifer area, plus a flood zone. So I'm highly concerned about that. I don't feel like those have been addressed by either the Planning Commission or the developer before going on any further with the rezoning. Also, to state up front, I was not notified. I'm not within the 300, but I did sign a petition along with many others, over 100 people. Those were not notified. The notification was given to Catherine Davidson, but it was short notice. It was not, it was like a week and a half, I believe, and to get that out, since we do not have a homeowners association, is difficult because not everyone is on the Nextdoor app. So we had her and I last time to get the 50 or 60 people, however many were there, we went out door to door, and we did not have time to do that. So I wanted to address that as well. The major concern I have, other than that, with the PUD is the lot size. If I don't know if you have the maps for that. I sent those, but I think it was after the noon I realized that you said to give these. to you. So I apologize for not getting those to you by noon so you could have those more visibly ready. But if you look at the Sunnybrook addition and the lot sizes, I have on the plat map on that we had 126 homes, and he's going with 173. We already have problems with our road, large cracks that we need repaired. This is going to add to the traffic and that's coming through there with 170 homes if we are joined as proposed. And so we're asking that not be the case, as well as the lot sizes. We have an average lot size of 7,464 square feet, not including the corner lots. Those are typically a lot larger in Sunnybrook. And then there's variable sizing throughout, as discussed in the master plan. So we're 65 wide across the front and then 120 deep. And Lance's proposed PUD shows their lot sizes would be 50 by 105, which is 33% less and increases the number of homes. Is 173 is what is proposed on that. And with the floodplain there, with the trees, mature trees along the fence line, it would be between Sunnybrook and the Chisholm Springs PUD, and then the northern trees that prevent, let me get that for you. Anyway, the trees on the northern, they protect us from the noise from T-Rex. If that's how you say it, I don't know, the industrial. And then also the trees along our fence line protect us from that noise as well. We've noticed that people further south in our neighborhood and closer to this PUD do not receive as much noise. And so we think it's important that those trees, and obviously you all think it's important that we reserve as many mature trees as possible, which all of this cuts in on his ability to have 173 homes. So I would hope that you all would take that into consideration with this PUD, and that it would be specified in here that there would be less, that it would be closer to the same lot sizes that because also he has sidewalk encroachments and we don't even have that. And along with that, we have, let me look here. It would oppose a higher traffic issue since we do not have the sidewalks and they come through with that many homes. And there are creeks that go through, and I think that's mentioned in your information you've given us concerning the updated PUD information, and everything has to be away 100 feet away from those. So I'm not sure how that 173 homes can go in that 40 acres. And that's really it.
I have a question.
Okay, hope I can answer it.
So I'm clear. Can you restate the reason you are not for smaller lots? Is there like a cliff notes on what is the main thing that you're worried about with smaller lots?
Well, for one thing, that was the other thing I forgot to mention, is a greenbelt area between our homes and and the new proposed subdivision, because if you look in our area around us, Walden Estates and the Park Place and Westbrook, with all of those that back up to them, there is either a natural or a man-made significant larger area for greenbelt between those, and he is proposing that he also butts up against the fences and uses our fence line where our mature trees are.
Are they on your property? They're on his property.
Right, but they are as required by or specified in your master plan for the city that we try to preserve those.
Sure, I'm just getting...
And those are for pollution, noise pollution and dust pollution from POGs that will help Sunnybrook addition as well.
Sure, I'm just curious how asking them to go to bigger lots affects that.
Going to bigger lots. So the fence line there, with what he's wanting to do is to back up to that, and so you would have several homes backing up to one home there using their fence. And so but besides that...
If it's still their backyard, they could still save the trees, right?
Do what?
So as an example, I mean, we could ask that the trees next to the fence line be preserved. I'm not sure that that would change or impact the size of the lot. So are there other issues tied to the lot size that you're concerned
Well, the size of the lot is what you all say, is that if they're adjacent and they're connected, that would be comparable sizes in the master plan.
So, yeah, the question that I have about lot size, JJ, is a 33% disparity in lot size between the two developments enough to trigger our policy concern about that?
What is our policy concern as well?
The abutting lots have to be 75% the size of the lots in the adjacent subdivision.
So a 33% disparity would put them out of sync with our policy. And what would be our recommended mitigation for that?
When they plat, they will have to plat those at the size to meet the subregs.
Okay. Okay. How do the lot sizes that they're proposing compare to the basic code requirements for R1?
They're 5,000 square feet, and R1 is 6,000.
6,000,
Yeah.
okay.
He says he's proposing 6.
Okay.
6,000.
So I don't know if she had a further question. I guess I'm still curious. So what I'm getting at is if the trees can be preserved, what other issues might you have with smaller lots?
Well, just what they're saying, like they're not meeting the requirements to adjacent neighborhoods, and he had on his PUD 5,050 by 100, so.
Okay, this is a rezoning application. The size of the lot specifically would be addressed at platting stage. Is that right, JJ?
They would, okay. I didn't know they were on his PUD information and on yours, so I just wanted to address that as
No,
well.
it's a perfectly valid point to raise.
Okay.
Did we have any other questions of Ms. Lloyd? Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Davidson. Hello, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Catherine Davidson, 9601 Blue Bonnet Place, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I've come to ask for 3 things, basically, today. 2 of them I hope you can accommodate. I know the 3rd will be pushing it. But I do ask that on the technical evaluations that you do add to keep the mature trees that protect us from the noise pollution that comes from T-Rex and also from the dirt and dust that fly across the field, which I sent pictures to the council members of that comes from pogue, sand, and dirt. When we had our PUD meeting, Mr. Wendell agreed he's a tree guy, so I would just like for that to also be added into the technical requirements that he does keep all the mature trees that line our the side of the street to where it protects us again from the noise pollution, the sand and dirt and dust. The second one is I saw in the technical recommendations, and I know it is part of the city's connectivity policy, to connect the streets. All I ask for that is that possibly a crash gate be provided between the 2 neighborhoods, just due to the fact that our neighborhood was built 35 years ago. We have no sidewalks. We are a community of walkers, of children riding their bikes in the street. I am worried with the additional traffic of 173 houses would cause several accidents. I live on a corner. I've already had my mailbox hit just from the people that live in my neighborhood. So I would thought that would be a good compromise for the connectivity plan, would be to do the crash gate just as protection for our neighborhood, for our children to still be able to ride their bikes, our neighbors and elderly to be able to walk the neighborhood daily as they do. The third thing I ask is that you look at the 500-year flood plan instead of the 100-year flood plan, just due to the fact that this is a very vulnerable area as far as the aquifer goes, and with all the building that is going on all around us. I do worry. I am an environmentalist. I do worry about the environment and would want to protect that as much as I possibly can. These are just the 3 items that I would just like to bring forward and hope that you would consider moving forward. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of Ms. Davidson? Thank you. Should I just ask you now, are you willing to preserve the trees that are in place?
The trees that I mentioned in the PUD meeting that we had were the trees along what's my west property line, their east property line, that kind of separates the 2 properties. I don't want to commit to every tree on the 40-acre tract, but those trees along that property line, absolutely. I told them 2 things. One is, A, I like trees, and B, it's expensive for me to make trees go away. And so, yes.
Right. A lot of times we'll ask for a percentage. At least that's how we've done it on a lot of these, right? So,
You're talking about across the property?
well, can we commit to some percentage along the edge of the property? I mean, is there a reason why?
How about if we commit to 100% along the edge of the property? That's what I heard him say he was willing to preserve.
Well, he said not.
Can we give a caliper, because there's some scrub in there that needs to go away, right? If we can talk about, hey, everything over.
Mature trees.
The mature tree, everything 4 inches, 5, I mean, something, right? Because, I'd like to, if you leave the scrub in there, it's hard for us to mow and maintain, right? So if we say, hey, everything over a 4-inch caliper, everything over a 6-inch caliper, we're going to leave.
I feel that's fair, and I'm seeing some nods. So
let's go with 4-inch. Are there trees along the northern property boundary as well?
Well, I own both sides of the northern property boundary.
Sorry?
I own both sides of the northern property boundary. So if you look at the black square of the northern boundary, I have under contract. At this point in time, I have under contract the 40-acre square and the 20 acres due north of it.
Oh, you do?
Yes, ma'am.
You have that under contract?
Yes, ma'am.
So more is coming.
Well, if the city needs it, I hope so.
I'm sorry.
Minor comment regarding the trees is there's a significant stand of trees there in that northwest corner. And I'm presuming that's drainage through there as well. So it's kind of a natural area. That's the existing drainage condition. The proposed is, I know it right now it's just a graphic and we're looking at use, but sure. I mean you're proposing to completely scrape that and put it with lots, and I think you're missing a big opportunity there to create an amenity for the neighborhood with a little bit more thought. I think you could preserve those trees. Those lots would be, I think, premium lots. and you kind of maintain some of the existing drainage patterns on the site too. So I'd like to see those trees preserved.
I'm not opposed to looking at that when it comes to the plating process. My concern is we have some undefined floodplain down in the southeast corner, and right now, being undefined, we don't know how much it is, right? If somehow that could be mitigated, and I could put my right now I was planning open space down there, right? Because that's kind of where I thought it had to be. If that could be mitigated, if it's 6 inches below BFE right now, and hey, you know what, I could use that and leave the trees up to the northwest, happy to. If I have to take out, 7 acres of floodplain in the southeast, and then I lose, 8 acres of trees in the northwest, all of a sudden I start to get where I can't get the lots into be tenable.
Well, I agree with Nate. I think, I'm a huge supporter of housing options, but whenever I look at this in this new document versus what's there today,
sure,
and the TEs, there's obviously something's got to give here. What do you think about these TEs? We haven't asked yet, but we've got 2, and one of them is maintain a 100-foot setback from stream banks. So how does that work with the plan that we have in hand?
Well, and so one of the things that we talked about with the neighborhood when we talked about preserving the trees on the west bank, as we look at the drainage that comes in, we can move the drainage and still provide that 100-foot. Right? And so I think that was kind of what we were hoping to be able to do. Again, it's a conceptual plan. We haven't put engineering on it yet. I don't know. I can't tell you that I know. I can't tell you that I have an answer to that. I can tell you that I'm willing to work within the TEs. And if 100-foot is what we need, then 100-foot is what we need.
So we've asked them to commit to 100% preservation of healthy mature trees along the west boundary. Is that correct?
Yes.
Nate, do you have a... Yeah. Part of that
So across the
riparian
property,
area?
not just on the western edge?
At the 100% rate? I think Mr. Highsmith said that generally there's a percentage for the whole. Basically, you've now taken pretty much every tree on the 40-acre tract at 100%.
Hey, I'm not trying to lessen the potential impact of this negotiation. I know typically I see that staff says, I think 60% is the number I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the amount of coverage. I'd have to look that up, but this site does not have a lot of tree coverage, so it might be 100%. I have to look it up.
Sounds like they're asking for 100. So here's...
How about 100% of 4-inch caliper and above along the western boundary, and all remaining above 6-inch calipers across the rest of the property?
How about okay, but I can also mitigate with planting my own 6-inch and above caliper? If for some reason there's one that's taken out, it takes out a whole lot because there's one tree. Okay, how about this? I take that one out, but I mitigate by adding another.
Yeah, you're going to need to install utilities. There might be that 1 or 2 that are in there, so I'm okay with that.
With mitigation, right? I don't have a problem with mitigation. If the concept is, guys, we don't want to lose trees, that's fine. But occasionally there's 1 or 2 that...
And a 1-inch for 1-inch replacement.
That is going to be hard if there's a sewer line that has to go in the middle where there's a 15-inch oak. I don't think you can plant.
I'm not asking to plant a 15-inch oak, but
got
a 15 1-inch oak.
15, okay, fair. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, an inch-for-inch mitigation, that I think is reasonable. Okay, so 100% along the west boundary, with it 60% in the treed area, above 6-inch?
They asked for 100.
100% above 6-inch.
And so I'm being advised that that's in keeping with the plan because of the small percentage of tree cover over the whole. It's less than 60%, so 100% is what we're asking for. Okay, I can live with that one-on-one.
Can I get a recap? What did we just agree to?
We will come back to that.
Okay, thanks.
Our resident note takers.
Okay, so we've settled the tree thing. We can move on.
What did we
moment.
settle on the tree thing?
We decided you were going to preserve 100% of the 4-inch caliper trees along the western property boundary and 100% of the 6-inch caliper trees, healthy mature trees, along the rest of the property with the ability to mitigate 1 inch per 1 inch, whether it's 15 1-inch trees or 1 15-inch tree.
I can work that out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lois Kingsley?
Hi. I don't actually live in Sunnybrook. I'm just going to speak kind of like specifically and generally.
Give me your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Lois Kingsley, and I live at 9513 Southwest 25th Street, Oklahoma City, 73128. I'm in the Fountain Grass community, which is about 1 mile south of this proposed PUD. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but just to make a quick point that I believe that Mr. Wendell intends on using affordable housing tax credits in OPA financing, and per their application process and their instructions, he was to have had the zoning in place before he ever applied. So his application with OPA fails due to that, and he would not be approved for that. I haven't told their board can still approve it, but at any rate, I just wanted to bring that out. Also, he mentioned something about that he said that he was going to put in a community shelter. He said at the last neighborhood meeting that he said that OFA requires him to put a shelter in every house that he will be building. Now, then the rest that I would like to speak about is flooding issues. I understand, as I understand it, I'm going to have to read this because I don't speak very well. As I understand it, and from the pictures I've seen of this proposed PUD property, this land serves as the stormwater catch-all for all of its surrounding properties, including the Sunnybrook neighborhood. If you allow this development to be built, then most of this ground will no longer be available to soak up this stormwater, and even though a detention pond is planned to be built there, there's still going to be plenty of runoff from the community that is going to end up in Mustang Creek, which then in turn empties into the North Canadian River. Due to all of the ongoing and future development that OKC is approving for out in our Mustang, Oklahoma City, Yukon area, where this PUD is, and all along Mustang Creek, the creek is filling up faster and faster, and it's eroding the bank sides as it flows on down to the North Canadian River. And I also understand that Yukon is suffering some severe flooding issues from the swollen North Canadian River also. My own community of Fountain Grass is suffering severe erosion from Mustang Creek, which runs just to the north of us, and the erosion is so bad that the bank sides and sections are almost to our north trail. And trying to find out from the city of Oklahoma City who's responsible to rectify the situation, they just tell us that the landowners are, that the city only has a responsibility if they have a drainage easement there. For me personally, I do not know, I don't see how the landowners can be made responsible for an erosion issue that is being caused and exacerbated by the city's continuous approval of even more developments such as this PUD that is going to take away even more ground that used to soak up the stormwater and now empties ever faster into Mustang Creek. This is a request on my part. I've been trying for some time and requested numerous times to be given where it is written that the city is only responsible for this drainage easement area. So if any of you can help me in getting this information, I would appreciate it. I just can't believe that you expect landowners to fix erosion issues along banks that are being made worse because all the land is being used up. We don't have control over that. Y'all do. See, where was I? Anyway, what I don't want to happen to the housing additions out there and along Mustang Creek is what's been happening is what happened to those houses in the Twin Lakes addition. They were just getting washed away into, I think it was Cimarron River, due to all the erosion. And so in closing, due to the flooding erosion issues that this area is already suffering from, I just request that you please not allow the rezoning from AA to a PUD to allow this development to be built, and to possibly consider this land in the future for a possible new city park out in our area that we do need. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of Ms. Kingsley before we let her go? Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. I'll tell you what little I know about this. Drainage is both a engineering and a legal issue with respect to who has the responsibility for the maintenance and clearing of particular pieces of waterway. When development occurs, it is required that that development not exacerbate flooding onto surrounding properties and so forth. So as part of the development process, as they're going through engineering, they'll have to work with staff to figure out some way to keep that from happening. This site clearly has some fairly significant drainage issues that are going to have to be dealt with to prevent any exacerbation of the existing drainage issues out there.
Now, I understand the city. What I've been told is that when a developer goes to build, whatever stormwater runoff is at that time, when they get done, it's supposed to be the same. And I don't really know how you can prove that when you get done, unless you're going to have some big heavy rain come through and you're going to have, taken some kind of measurements. I don't see the logic in it. I mean, you've taken away all that ground and you filled it in with asphalt and houses and put a little pond over here to hold water for a while in a corner. And then it's all going to eventually
So as part of that process that Chairwoman Powers was talking about, so the drainage department requires a drainage report, and there's very complex and calculations that are involved. They have to show existing conditions, pre-development conditions, and post-development conditions. It all plays into the different types of surfaces that you have, the amount of detention. So the drainage department has to sign off on all those calculations that are prepared by an engineer. So it's an industry standard, those calculations are. So that's how they prove pre-development runoff versus post-development runoff.
And I can attest to the fact that they take it very seriously. So it's not something that they just sort of slapdash.
Yeah, it's just Mustang Creek. It's just filling up, like I said, faster and faster. And we have a picnic area on our north trail, and the land is eroded away underneath it to where the fence that's here is now gone. It's just getting out of hand.
Could we perhaps at least ascertain whether or not this area is slated for any improvements as part of either the current or our now new bond issues, whether there's any improvement in this area that is on the books, as we say? And we have your contact information, and I'll ask staff to ascertain that information and communicate it to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Jerry Sinard. Did I pronounce that correctly? Sinard.
Hello, my name is Jerry Sinard. I live at 1412 Softwind Avenue, Oklahoma City, 73128. I'm a resident of Sunnybrook. I live on the far east side. I have been there for 23 years. Regarding this application, no one hardly mentions the fact that these are rent-to-own after 15 years tax credit homes. These are not homes for sale. These are all rent-to-own. You have to rent them for 15 years, and after 15 years, using tax credits and bond issue money, they build the homes, and after 15 years, the residents have the right, after they've lived there for 15 years, to purchase them.
I'll say that strictly speaking, whether properties are for sale or for rent is not part of our determination.
Okay.
What we're here to look at is whether this particular patch of ground is appropriate for the level of development, in this case, single-family residential housing,
Okay.
that is being requested.
Okay. Can we go to the Senate Bill 416 signed by Governor Fallon about the Affordable Housing Act, and then the amendments of Senate Bill 1411 adjusting that to make these houses in small communities that need housing, affordable housing. This is what the whole issue is about.
Well, if the property is not appropriate for the kind of program that they're intending to make, that determination and approval is not our responsibility.
Okay.
It'll either rise or fall based on its merits, I assume. What we're here to determine is whether this patch of ground is appropriate for single-family residential housing.
Okay. Well, I'll give you my portion of it. The pictures you have of the trees, and that's a really old Google Earth photo. The trees have grown way further down in there, and there's a much larger patch of trees. I live on the far east side. The whole east side now is covered with trees. The reason we like the trees there is because there's a 40-acre oil field supply company on the south side of Southwest 15th Street that runs 24/7, 365. They have a dirt lot. It's about 45 to 50 acres. Trucks come in and out of there all day, all night, and when the wind blows, the dust comes across the field. It looks like a haboob. If you know what a haboob is, you can't see over my fence. You can't see 25 yards into that field. The dirt is so bad. So those trees protect our neighborhood from that dust drifting over, because we've got a pretty good canopy of trees running along there that keeps the dirt from coming into our neighborhood. We still get a little bit of it, but it still does protect it. Also, that section that you saw coming down there that you spoke about that comes down, that protects us from the sound from T-Rex. They have some sort of milling machine or some kind of fan machine that sometimes runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have a recording of it if you'd like to hear it. Can you hear it? No? Just a few seconds.
I'm sorry. You're talking about property that is not the subject property, correct?
No, I'm talking about the property that...
Activity that's happening somewhere else that he cannot control or stop. Is that what we're talking about? Second thing is, you're talking about trees again. We have really spent a lot, I think you're talking about trees.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
I don't mind. If you have anything else, we spent so much time on trees, I just didn't want to reopen the tree subject.
I understand. I will bring up one thing. It was at the city council meeting, the July 2nd, the city council meeting. Mr. Wendell brought in a plant. A lady from North Edmond, almost to Edmond, North Oklahoma City. She had nothing to do with this property. He told us at the meeting, he coached her exactly what to say. She came in, she knew the size of the lots, she knew the size of the houses, but what the rent was going to be, she knew everything about it. We were kind of curious how she knew and where she was. He said at the meeting, I coached her. I told her exactly what to say. Everything was right, wasn't it? I said, well, no, because the house sizes are now smaller. Everything is different. But he brought in a plant to the council meeting.
Well, maybe you should take that up with them.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just more upset about the letter that you received about our additions.
I'm sorry, you'll have to come forward.
Understand within the last 24 hours you received a lengthy letter from the vice president of a company that provides money for these low-income housing that kind of downgraded the Sunnybrook addition. They were kind of those people, that our houses now are average about $162,000, that the homes that they're going to be built over here are going to be about $160,000.
Yeah, I will just tell you, I think we give that kind of thing the consideration that it deserves.
But I wanted to tell you, the thing that you received was done in 2010. She said it was a recent study. It was from 2010 figures. So it's nearly 10 years old. So thank you.
Do you have any questions of Mr. Synard before we let him go?
I don't have a question. This gets to, a discussion that we have here quite a bit. I don't care about your home value, personally. Other people might. I am here as a commissioner to ensure that we provide equitability in how we approach our zoning. I don't think that somebody who can't afford as much land or as much house as you shouldn't be able to live near you. And this was my problem the first time. This is why I'm in favor of this. And I absolutely hate to hear neighbors come up or people protest items because this is going to be a cheaper home than mine and it's next door. Don't care about it, don't want to hear it. And matter of fact, I'm sorry, I'm going to get frustrated here. I'm going to stop there. It's not the right way to do this. And just, I know you care about your investment. Homes are a big investment. It's tough to see potentially cheaper homes coming in next to you because you're worried it's going to hurt your resale value and your investment. I get it. That is not. It's still you got to know in your heart it's still not right to say other people can't live near me because of this. So anyway, I'm going to move on.
To be fair, I don't think he said that earlier. You begged. That's not what he said. I don't think he got very close to that.
We're not going to do this. Do we have any other questions of Mr. Synard before we let him go? Come forward.
Is there in this technical section, is there a way for, the PUD does not state that he will be putting shelters in every house? He's planning on a...
I'm sorry, we should ask him about that.
He's planning on a community shelter, but, he said, OFA said it will require him. Can you make it a part of the PUD that he will put a shelter in every house? Because if you've got 173 houses... It would
be possible to do that. Let's call Mr. Wendell up and ask him. What is the issue with respect to...
Sure. Happy to discuss shelter. So OFA, Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency, if I use their financing, does require that I provide some sort of storm shelter. They don't specify, is it a single shelter per home or could it be a community shelter? In the past 200 homes that I've built, I've done individual shelters per home. But recently, in an apartment complex that I built, we did a community shelter, used ICF forms and built concrete wall. And what I really liked about it from a concept was, look, when I put an individual shelter in somebody's garage, let me assure you 90% of the time, a year later, it's full of stuff and they can't use it when they need it. But if I take the same amount of money and I build a community shelter that's, in this case, it's going to be 3,500-ish square feet with bathrooms, big open space, now not only is it something that protects you from the storm, but it's also something that you can use, and in that apartment complex, hey, if somebody wants to rent that out for, or not rent, but use it for a kid's, party or community meeting, which we've had to have, there it is, and it's usable. So we've kind of moved from, let's not put the metal box in the garage, let's take that money and build a community room that can be used for something besides long-term storage.
So how do you police that? How do you keep residents from inviting all their friends and family over and displacing your residents or this community's residents? And how do you have the capacity to support all those people?
Well, it's tough, right? So we do a couple of, we put security cameras on it that have triggers that when there's movement inside. So if somebody goes into it when they're not supposed to, it triggers an alarm. The second one is we put access control on the door, and residents get a combo to the access control so that if there is an actual storm event, right, they can go ahead and get inside. That's how we've done it. That's how we've done it so far. I'm not telling you that we've got it 100% right.
I was going to say, I just don't see how that works. If you've got a resident that invites 10 of their family members over because there's a storm, then you reach capacity and you've got people that you've got to turn away because they can't fit in there that, you know.
No, I mean, it's a fair point. It's similar to a community shelter, similar to a church's community shelter, right? And they ask at the community meeting, hey, are they, the residents of Sunnybrook, going to be allowed in the shelter? I don't have a solid answer. My answer is I'm going to provide what I can afford to provide, right? We're not going to post guards. I don't think anyone's going to tell someone as the storm's beating down on them, no, I'm sorry, you don't live here, you're not allowed in. But I will tell you that I'm not living there, and so I won't be there at 2 in the morning when the sirens go off. I'm sorry, that's not a solid answer. We're trying to do what we can do, and I mean, I think the 3,500 square feet is good. I don't have a solid answer for who's going to have a pass in or not.
So you would be agreeable to the PUD document itself indicating that either individual shelters in each home will be provided or a community shelter with, is it fair to say capacity and cite a number?
It's currently in the PUD. It's already there.
Okay.
It doesn't cite a capacity number. It just says a community storm shelter.
So how many units are we looking at in this?
So if I use the financing, and again, I've been clear with everyone that I think this is a good piece of dirt whether I use OFA's financing or not, right? But if I use the financing, it's for 160 homes. So I've also been clear with the residents that this is a conceptual drawing done without knowing exactly what the size of the floodway or flood zone is. This is conceptual. There's actually a typo in it. It's not 50-foot wide lots. But my financing is for 160 homes, if I get it and if that's what I use.
Do we have emergency personnel that can come and answer a question for us? And what would be appropriate capacity for a community shelter for a neighborhood that size? 300 people, or, I have no idea.
So OFA,
I assume emergency
OFA has a
services
requirement.
would have some idea.
OFA's requirement is 1.5 bodies per bedroom. And then when you get into storm shelter requirements, it's 5 or 7 square feet. Do you remember?
Just like with parking requirements, there's
standard.
There's standards that determine the size.
Right.
So I'm assuming that OFA will enforce those standards on him.
Correct.
But if he doesn't use them, wouldn't it be better for the PUD to at least cite to a standard that he would meet? If not,
if
name
OFA
a
doesn't
number?
fund it, then I'm assuming he's not installing the shelter.
Well, unfortunately, that was a concern that I had with Councilman McAtee, was that because of the complaint of kind of these people that we've talked about here recently, I've now been given these restrictions that I have to use. But if I don't get the funding and I end up building an ideal home subdivision, I now have restrictions that other people don't have, which would include a storm shelter, right? And that was a concern that I had with going through this process as opposed to the straight-up R1 that I had originally asked for. So I would ask that we don't put a restriction on that storm shelter because...
I think the restrictions happen at the OFA level. I agree that seems onerous for us because we don't do that to other developers.
But this is part of a PUD negotiation. So, I mean, that's...
Well, yeah, that's up to you. I would agree with the applicant here that those restrictions are part of the OFA submission, and I don't see us do that to anyone else.
I mean, as I understood it, he had agreed to do that. So I don't, as part of the negotiation on the PUD. So
And
I
it's
think
in
that's
there.
why we're here, because it's not a straight R1 zoning request at this point.
Sure.
And it is in the PUD that I provide a community storm shelter. But we also can't say at this point in time, let's say because of the restrictions that we've already put in with trees, right, that I can't get the 160 lots. I don't know right now how many lots I'm going to be able to get. And so to put that number down and then all of a sudden I can only build half the houses, then this PUD kind of goes forward with the piece of land even if I don't do the restrictive financing. And so I ask that we don't do I've gotten okay with, we'll put the fact that I provide a community storm shelter in the PUD, but to put that community storm shelter in an even tighter box right now, I don't think that's fair. We don't know what this is going to look like yet.
Well, I don't think it is meaningful to say you'll build a community storm shelter that'll hold 25 people. You know, so I think it's important that we have some sort of standard that we're making reference to. I mean, I don't know what it is because I'm not at all familiar with how those kind of things are calculated. But, you know, if there's an obligation that's being undertaken here, it seems to me it needs to be a meaningful one. JJ, has he gone to check on emergency services to see if there's anybody who can help us out here? No? Okay. Let's see sort of where we are then. I'm quite certain that Commissioner Coffey has some things she wants to share with us about this application. So,
Well, I do. This project is, of course, in Ward 3, my ward. I have spent some considerable time researching this project, researching the terms and conditions of the Affordable Housing Act. I've met, of course, with the applicant and homeowners. The homeowners don't actually have a homeowners association, but they've put together a pretty strong group of people with some, as you might guess, some pretty strong feelings about this situation, and rightfully so. I visited with several individuals, 3 or 4 elderly, well, I use the term elderly cautiously, but about my age, couples with some vested interests whose primarily estate consisted of the homes that they've worked hard to acquire and to pay for. An interesting group of people in this area, probably as ethically representative as a group of homeowners I've run across. A large population of Asians, Hispanics, American Indians, Hispanics, I mentioned, some white folks, and some African Americans. Probably as an accepting group of people as I've run across in a very long time. They work together, they play together, and they support one another. I mentioned, I think, that I made some site visits to a couple of other projects that Mr. Wendell has put together, one in Duncan. I think you have 2 projects in Duncan. I visited probably the older one, and I also drove over to Chickasha to visit a project there. I think initially when Commissioner Chairman Powers and I visited with Wendell, Mr. Wendell, initially we came from that meeting very, very impressed, thinking how could this be anything but a win-win situation when you rent to own a home, which is a lot of people's dream come true. I think under the right circumstances that concept is a very positive concept. When I went to visit these 2 sites, I went there with a very positive attitude, hoping to be very impressed with what I found there. And in some ways I was. I think I should start by describing this particular location that this property is projected to be built on. It's problematic in nature. You've heard, of course, about the flooding problems. I went to this particular site on 4 different occasions after significant rainfalls, a couple of times in May, once in June and actually 2 times in August. And on those 4 occasions, this property was totally underwater, which looked more like a lake than it did a piece of property, with a semblance of a river running down the east side of this property. I'm sure with some significant engineering and work that could be corrected. If it's going to take a heck of a lot of dirt to be brought in, a lot of engineering with significant cost, I'm sure. And in that respect, I'm very glad that Councilman McAtee made a suggestion that we consider this as a PUD rather than just an R1 zoning. Also, we've heard about environmental concerns as it relates to T-Rex and to the oil well disposal across the street south. We certainly can't blame T-Rex or the oil well disposal company. They were certainly there first. This property was zoned industrial 35 or 40 years ago, and probably in reality that's what it should remain. As it relates to the site visits to Chickasha and to Duncan, I have to tell you up front that I was somewhat disappointed. There were several homes that I noticed that were probably in somewhat of a state of deferred maintenance. There was a house, one at both projects, that had some boarded up windows. Excuse my allergies. I don't know if that was a result of maybe some recent storm damage or whether there's some actual repairs that needed to be made. There were numerous yards that were unmowed with tall grass. Actually, there were some yards that had more dirt than grass. I did pick up a flyer that was an encouragement to residents to mow their yards in lieu of some reduced rent. At both locations, there were cars, well, actually just one car at each location up on blocks. One car had fluid running from beneath it, transmission fluid, oil, maybe both, running from beneath the car out into the street. There was a semi-rig, 18-wheeler, pulled up halfway on the curb and into the street, which I'm sure was against some code. Very little playground equipment, a couple of soccer goals on a patch of crabgrass, I guess a playing field of sorts. I did visit with 2 or 3 residents that were loitering around the mailbox out by the street. One lady was in the process of moving. She complained about the inability to get repairs made at her house, unreturned calls to the management. Another gentleman complained about inordinate utility bills, stating that his electric bill exceeded the cost of his rent the prior month. Lady that complained about the inequity in the rent. Her next door neighbor basically had the same amount of income, same size family, but her rent was much less than hers, and I don't know the details of all of that. There may have been legitimate reasons for that. I simply don't know. One thing that really stood out to me was the barren nature of the lands, the yards. I don't think I saw a single tree in the yard, no shrubs at all. I think what I really come back to on this project is the terms and conditions of the Affordable Housing Act, and that goes back to the need for this type of housing. In this particular part of West Oklahoma City, unlike Oklahoma City in general, we have such a tremendous boom in construction. We currently have 7, I think possibly going on 8 now, housing projects in that area. You probably already know that this part of West Oklahoma City, particularly Mustang and Yukon, is the fastest growing area in the state of Oklahoma. And that's been the case now for about almost 2 years. Many of the homes in these 7 and 8 projects now, about 35% of them are in the price range of $150,000 to $275,000. There are signs up on 2 of these projects that are with 2.5 miles of this proposed project with monthly payments starting at $719 a month. That's low, 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 lower than many rental costs in the area. So why invest $350,000 in 15 years of rent and then turn around and mortgage a house for another couple of $100,000 when you could move into a house to begin with for close to $715 a month? You know, I was in the rental business with my family for almost 20 years. Thank goodness I'm not in that business anymore. That's why my hair is prematurely gray. And I not once during those years had a tenant that stayed in my property for 15 years. Rental property is transient in nature. People are in rental properties temporarily, either to save money to buy a home, or they're in a transitional situation as it relates to their work. I reviewed the application for the rent-to-own properties, and it's a very, very extensive application, a good application. But I also picked up a rental application for a 30-year mortgage, and it's not a great deal different. People probably don't think they qualify for a mortgage, but in reality, that's not that difficult. If you have a good job, a stable job for a couple of years, and a fairly decent credit rating, it's not that difficult to apply these days for a mortgage. I was interested in a recent television commentary, I think on public television, about Oklahoma school teachers. It's now easier for them to qualify for a home loan than it is for rent because of the low mortgage rates. I also was happy to see in one of my utility bills, I'm one of those people who don't do all of my billing payments online because my credit card has been hacked twice in the last couple of years, so I've gone back to writing checks. But the city's program that makes available $15,000 forgivable deferred loans, that's a wonderful program for first-time home buyers. By the way, people in this portion of West Oklahoma City that this project is in qualify for that particular loan. I'm also kind of concerned about this particular project being in an area where there's no public transportation. I would think people in this particular income levels would have a need for public transportation. There's been some mention of property values and how projects like this might affect property values, and perhaps that's not what some of my fellow commissioners think is important for us to consider. But as I was looking back through my training materials when I first became a commissioner, there's a section in there under, I think it's Article 14, under PUDs and what that entails, and under the goals and objectives. One of the things, and I will quote from that a PUD shall achieve, that we shall achieve the following land use objectives: that we should minimize adverse effects upon surrounding property and the character of the neighborhood. And I mentioned I did meet with an elderly couple who raised their children in this neighborhood and are now helping to raise their grandchildren. And they were teary-eyed when we discussed this particular project. The thought of, I'll quote them, I'll sort of quote them, dropping 173 tiny houses, 1,350 square foot houses, on 173 tiny lots, 10-foot backyards. Envision that, a 10-foot backyard, a 20-foot front yard. And what that will do to their property values, which they hope to leave their house to their children, to to finish raising their grandchildren. I think it is part of our responsibility to help protect their property values. I think finally, central to my decision at least, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the ultimate purpose of this affordable housing bill is to, which is funded, of course, by federal tax dollars and extended through 1411 to the city of Tulsa and Oklahoma City, is to place this housing in areas where it's needed. I can tell you that Yukon, Mustang area, the median family income now is about $100,000. This is not an area where this rent-to-own low-income housing is needed. Do I support low-income housing? Of course I do, and so do each of you, but not in this particular area. This is not the right place for this project. There are many, many, many places in Oklahoma City where this project is needed, but this is not it. Within a mile and a half of this project, there are 160 fairly new rental units. 200 new rental villas are coming in within 3 miles of this project. There are 300 apartment units under construction within 4 miles of this project. Do we need more? In my opinion, no, and absolutely not. I will not be supporting this project, and probably, well, not probably, but we'll be making a motion that we deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have something else you wanted to share with us?
I would. Ms. Coffey, we did have some storm damage in those towns, and so, yes, I can say that. I would like to point out that the two neighborhoods that you looked at are different than this piece of property. This piece of property is in what I'm going to call a nice part of town. It's an area that people want to live. In Duncan and in Chickasha, I was required to use what's called a QCT, which kind of is the layman's terms for not a nice part of town. So in Chickasha, I did not have a particular tract like this, but I did urban infill, scattered site, a house here and 2 blocks over a house there, in the worst part of town in Chickasha. And it has been hard. I would agree with you. It has been hard to keep those tenants, where I would like them to be. We've tried. You saw that we were posting them and trying to keep them, where they needed, to keep their houses up like they needed to. And same thing in Duncan. That project that you went to in Duncan is in considered the worst part of town of Duncan. And I'm looking at Oklahoma City and definitely could look at putting housing in, the Capitol Hill area. My parents grew up there. I think it's a fine area. But the reality is people that want to come live in my housing would rather do it in Mustang schools. They'd rather do it in Yukon schools. That's where they want to be. And like you said, some of them were still working on their cars, and that's not allowed, but, we work on that as quickly as we can. But they do have vehicles, and they do have the ability to get around. These aren't, Mr. Senard talked about my plant. No, that was someone that I knew that lived in an apartment that would like to be able to have better housing in Oklahoma City in a better school district than she was in. And I did talk to her about what I was trying to do and asked her to come speak to the city council and say, hey, I'm one of those guys that could qualify and that needs this type of housing and wants to be in Mustang school system. I absolutely hear and understand that, that's not what the neighbors next door want. But it's a needed housing. I think the housing that I built, is similar and in line with the housing next door, right? They're next door to me. They start around 1,300 and go up to about 2,000. I intend to build 14 to 1,550 square feet. So I think that we're in line. We're not exact, but we're close. So I do think that this part of town needs this type of housing. The millennial generation is not as much into home ownership as, some of the generations that are getting older and owning their homes. They are looking to be more renters. And we look at the state housing study that says Oklahoma City has got the largest need of housing, across the whole state. I feel like, and the market study kind of shows that there's a huge need for housing in that area. People want to live in that area. The residents that, have talked about what a bad location it is for housing are the guys that live right next door to it and think that it's a great location for them. I'd like to get other people that opportunity. That would be a subject to question.
I don't disagree that Oklahoma City, parts of Oklahoma City need this housing. I don't disagree with you at all on that. I do disagree that Mustang Yukon in this particular area of West Oklahoma City does not need this housing in this particular spot. I particularly don't think the Sunnybrook area needs this. The very people that talk today are from Sunnybrook. They don't need this. They don't want this. And, and the one thing that disappoints me most, I think, in terms of the correspondence that we received as late as this morning, is the implication that these people were biased in their opinion, particularly as it relates to being critical of the kind of people that will occupy this housing. They were not critical. They were not biased. They were certainly not prejudiced against these people. These were wholesome, accepting people, the finest people I've ever met. They were certainly not critical in any way of the kind of people that will occupy these houses, and that really disappointed me to see that in writing. Thank you.
To me, at the heart of the case, it's an R1 rezone. It's asking if, what he initially came here before. I think you got bad advice from Councilperson McAtee to come back through with a PUD. R1 is R1. That's what next door is. That's what he's asking for. His business model, to me, is none of my concern. I think 1,300 square foot homes are great. It's what I'd make a business out of myself, doing small homes on small lots, and I think there is a market for it, and I think we've got, if we decide that we are capitalist country and we let the markets decide, this is one of those things where we've got to let the market decide. And we come in and we say, no, it's different here, and we're going to do that to ourselves until we've done that. Every time somebody comes in and protests, and then suddenly we're going to be a place that's lacking in housing, like a lot of more mature cities.
I think this is a slightly different situation in that, this is not a purely market-driven. Clearly, it is a highly subsidized project. In the event that it becomes an Oklahoma Finance Authority or rent-to-own, or that it's. So I'm not sure that's exactly the right way to look at that.
Well, I'm not sure that we should be either turning that against him. That's my point.
I got that part. I really did. Well, I think we've probably had all the discussion that we need about this. You indicated that you intended to make a motion.
I make a motion or recommend to City Council that we deny this application.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to deny item number 25. Cast your votes, please. It is denied. That's not appropriate. Item 27.
Oh, okay. Item 27 is application by a real home away from home to rezone 19,000 Northwestern Avenue from PUD 201 to PUD 1733.
Oh, our applicant wasn't here earlier. I guess he hasn't come. Were you able to get in touch with him? Okay, great. So I'll take a motion to continue. Did we decide 2 weeks or? I'm sorry?
He was under the understanding that it was till 10:10.
I'm sorry. Tell me again.
He was under the understanding that it was to be until 10:10.
Oh, okay. So I'll take a motion to continue item number 27 until October the 10th. That is what it says.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue item number 27 until October the 10th. Cast your votes, please. It is continued. Okay, so let's do this. That is the end of our regular agenda. Communications and reports, additional items. Communications and reports, Planning Commission committees, Planning Commission members.
Any update on the code update?
Yes, we have.
Planning Department.
We've received some information from them, which is an updated work plan, and just now, actually, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, but we will be looking at that, and more information will be forthcoming. I know I said that last time.
I haven't missed a meeting or anything.
No. So that's what we've been looking forward to, and that'll help us plan our whole engagement strategy and how this group and any other group that wants to be involved can be.
And I don't know about you guys, but I'm regularly hitting up people that I meet about wanting to get involved in the project. So I think it will behoove us to have a pretty wide base of input as we go forward with the code update. So, Development Services Department. Did you want to speak? No? Municipal Counselor's Office. Citizens to be heard. Sure. Sure.
Because I don't know your process, what just happened with his denial, is that finalize his process, or?
No, he'll continue from here to City Council. They have the last word.
Okay, so he still goes to City Council for theirs?
Right, and it'll be about 6 weeks, as I understand it usually takes, to get from here to there, so.
Okay. And then if City Council were to deny it, can this still be pursued?
Well, he could pursue it to district court if he so chose.
Okay. Then that would get really expensive. I just didn't know.
Yeah, that would be a
all the
whole different
process.
thing, not part of our deal.
Thank you.
Right, sorry, something that I should have brought up, and I thankfully JJ pointed out, was that vote on the last case, the 1734, was 4-2, and 5 votes are needed for a recommendation.
Hold on. So.
Yeah, so that was not.
So it failed? It was a continuance. Oh, it's been continued. Okay. Mr. Wendell, our vote was 4-2.
Right.
And it requires 5 votes for a decision. So you've been continued until our next hearing, which is what date? Do we know?
Yeah, it was 4 to September 25.
September 26th. So we'll be seeing you again on September the 26th.
I guess, sorry, Ms. Kravitz.
Sorry.
Okay, so I guess we had 2 missing votes. Is that?
3.
There are, yes, we had 3. There are 2 absent and 1
Mr. Craven's going to recuse, I would, okay. Okay, so we would continue and see how it voted out next time. Unless I could change someone's mind between now and then, my best case would be a tie.
Well, we don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
You can take it forward to City Council with no recommendation.
Well, you know, I guess we can come back on the 26th, and that's still before I get in front of City Council.
Hold on a second.
You could also, Planning Commission could choose to just forward it on to City Council without a recommendation.
We could choose.
And that itself, and vote 5-2, or, well, 4-2, that.
Would have to be 5-1, wouldn't it?
Right, yeah.
I'm just saying we've
My
made
math
that
there.
decision
Right.
before.
Yes. That's true.
What's Mary think about that?
Can I make a motion that it go to City Council with no recommendation?
I'll second
You
that.
certainly can.
All right.
Second.
I would like to make a motion that it proceed to city council with no recommendation.
Are we doing okay here? I mean, we're within our, just based on where we are.
We would need to rescind the vote on the 4-2 recommend denial.
Do we?
Well, it wasn't effective, but I think just to make sure that everything's, I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
I'd rather
That's
not
my
rescind it. I think I'd rather not rescind it.
Okay.
I think I'd like to leave it like it is.
It was ineffective because it did not.
But, yeah, that's right. It was ineffective. So we have a motion to forward this case to city council without recommendation. And did I hear a second?
Yes, I did.
I have a motion and a second to continue this case to city council without recommendation. Cast your votes. It will go forward.
Thank you.
It will go forward to city council without recommendation. So we will not see you on the 26th, unless you just want to come visit, because I know those benches are so comfortable. And we are on our list of things to do, down to citizens be heard, other business, none, and adjournment. I'll take a motion. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.